It all begins with a simulation and strategy game where the player trains the absolute worst demon lord to become the greatest of them all. The game becomes a massive hit because it brings back the classic simulation style in a modern and innovative way. One extremely loyal fan spent his entire day defending the game online and arguing with anyone who spoke poorly of it. But all that passion crumbles when the game simply takes a terrible turn and goes completely downhill. The company releases a new expansion in less than 1 year, leaving all the players filled with high expectations. However, the update brings awful, nonsensical endings that completely destroy the fans' excitement. Disappointed with the result, he decides to vent all his frustration by writing a furious review. Unexpectedly, the game developers respond to his comment with a highly defiant tone. The creative team tells him to try making a better ending himself, which makes the young man extremely angry. Suddenly, the computer screen begins to glow with an intense, blinding light, swallowing the young man into his dark room. He finds himself falling endlessly into a mysterious purple portal, filled with lightning and strange energies along the way. The young man is terrified as he plummets, trying to understand where on earth he ended up after that bright light. He keeps falling until a giant red eye appears out of nowhere in the middle of that endless darkness. A shadowy creature rises before him amidst that whirlwind of floating purple energy. The mysterious figure begins to speak in an incomprehensible language, leaving the young man completely baffled. Waking up with a severe headache, his vision slowly begins to focus on a massive iron gate. He opens his eyes wide and realizes he is standing in front of an imposing entrance that seems to guard a castle. Looking up, he comes face to face with a gigantic structure floating right in the middle of the blue sky. Intrigued, he touches the gate and feels that this strange place is extremely familiar to him. The young man spots a fluttering flag and recognizes the symbol of the game he criticized so much on the internet. He goes into absolute shock upon realizing that, in some bizarre way, he has ended up inside the game itself. Despair hits hard as he tries to accept that he now inhabits the body of one of the characters there. Suddenly, a butler wearing glasses appears behind the gate and addresses him by the name of Lord Nan. He is confused, unable to understand who this character could be that the man just mentioned. Taking a close look at the older man's face, he recognizes that it is Kane, the famous butler from the game. The young man realizes that the butler is reciting the exact same introductory lines he already knew by heart. Kane thanks him immensely for volunteering to be the new mentor for the Demon Lord. At that moment, he remembers the provocative message the developers left in his comment section. The young man realizes the sheer scale of the trouble he has gotten into by being chosen to change the ending of the story. In another room of the castle, a little girl asks her loyal maid Cecily how her outfit looks. She looks at herself in the mirror and explains that she tried to wear more mature clothing, but she is still very insecure. Hugging her teddy bear, she shyly confesses that she feels a bit strange in the outfit. Cecily is completely charmed and cannot resist the extreme cuteness of her young master. The maid tries to calm her down, saying she is only nervous because of the arrival of her new mentor. But the little one cheers up quickly when she finds out they prepared a delicious pudding for her to eat. She thanks her happily while the maid continues to melt over how adorable the little lord is. Suddenly, a knock on the door interrupts the moment, and Kane announces himself from the other side of the hallway. The butler enters the room and informs her that the new mentor who accepted the position is already waiting for her. The little girl puts on her buckle shoes and prepares to go meet her mysterious visitor. Kane smiles upon seeing her determination and suggests they head straight to the audience chamber. Sitting majestically on her giant throne, she tells the butler she is ready to begin. The grand doors of the hall swing open, and firm footsteps announce the entrance of the new mentor into the room. Nan enters the majestic hall and greets the young girl, saying it is an absolute pleasure to meet Lord Seer. The young man approaches the throne with elegant strides and formally introduces himself as Mentor Nan. That cute little girl is Seer, the only daughter of the former demon lord, who was once the second strongest. Unfortunately, her father ended up falling in combat during a terrible war that took place 2 years ago. Due to this massive tragedy, little Seer had to take the throne at just 5 years old. Without her father's leadership, the family lineage declined drastically, leaving them in a highly dangerous situation. Suddenly, the little lord runs down from her throne and goes straight toward her new mentor. She makes a cute bow to greet him. Leaving the young man completely flustered by her gesture, the little girl tells him he can speak freely because now she is just his student and no longer the Grand Lord. The young man pats her head and gently asks her to just call him teacher. With a smile on his face, he promises to turn little Seer into the greatest demon lord in the entire realm. The little one accepts the challenge instantly and replies super excitedly while tightly hugging her teddy bear. Shortly after, he closes the bedroom door and his expression changes completely upon finding himself alone in the hallway. The young man drops to his knees on the floor in utter despair, realizing the monumental mess he has just gotten into. He panics, wondering if he has completely lost his mind by agreeing to be a mentor to a video game character. The young man remembers that he knew the game inside and out, but he knows that playing on a computer is completely different from real life. He starts to freak out because clicking buttons is much easier than actually protecting a real person in this world. The young man remembers he does not even know how to use magic and questions why he did not just turn down the offer in the first place. Perhaps he accepted the position because he understood the girl's pain all too well and wanted to help her in some way. Just as he thinks about quitting the job and leaving, his eyes begin to glow with a brilliant golden color. A flood of memories from the previous owner of that body invades his mind, leaving him completely dazed. He sees the image of an incredibly powerful demon and realizes that this Lord Nan was someone legendary with this new magical knowledge in hand. He realizes he actually stands a chance of surviving there. The young man regains his confidence and decides he will do whatever it takes to change the tragic fate of this world. He smirks, realizing he might actually achieve the happy ending he wanted so badly in the game. However, he finds it very strange that his memories are only returning in small pieces, bit by bit. The next day, the little girl asks in surprise why they are having their lesson in the garden instead of the library. The young man explains that studying outdoors increases concentration and even grants extra attribute bonuses. He then asks if her teddy bear will also participate in that special magic lesson today. Seer looks a bit sad as she says the teddy bear is her only friend and that she really needs his company. Kane watches from a distance as the mentor remembers that the toy is considered her very first servant. The young man greets the teddy bear gently and asks him to help protect the little girl. He shakes the toy's paw to seal their friendship pact right before the watchful eyes of the little lord. The little one mentions that Butler Kane suggested she learn other subjects before attempting to control Mananon points to the makeshift chalkboard and questions if the history of the realm is truly the best starting point. He calls the butler old-fashioned, completely unaware that the older man is standing right behind him, overhearing the conversation. The teacher explains that she needs to master mana to defend herself, which is why practical lessons start right now. Seer gets super excited and proudly shares that she has already finished all her royal studies on theory. The young man gestures, saying that theory is only useful in practice, and notices how politely she still speaks. At that moment, a magical scroll filled with ancient writing appears floating before them in the garden. The little girl looks curiously at the object, and the young man explains that it is her magical training journal. He promises a delicious pudding as a reward if she completes all her tasks and uses the scroll properly. The young man begins to draw on the board to explain the difference between accumulated mana and usable mana. The little lord becomes pensive and shyly confesses that she does not know what determines the amount of useful mana. The young man explains that all magical beings possess internal circuits and asks if she knows their purpose. He teaches her that these channels allow energy to flow and asks what would happen if she had many of them. Seer quickly deduces the correct answer and receives praise from the teacher for reasoning so fast. She lets out a cute giggle, and the young man realizes that compliments are excellent for motivating her and increasing her affection. Nan explains that the energy limit is determined at birth, but the number of channels can be expanded through heavy training. Suddenly, a colossal pillar of light and magical energy explodes toward the sky, startling the little girl. The young man demonstrates his absurd power by releasing a massive amount of accumulated mana all at once. Seer thinks it is incredible, while the butler stands shocked to see that the young man is no ordinary mage. Kane adjusts his monocle, deeply impressed as he notes that the young mentor possesses extremely rare abilities. With sparkling eyes, the little lord asks if she will be able to do that too, and he reassures her that she will. The young man remembers she is the heir to a legendary bloodline, and the little girl promises to give it her absolute best. Meanwhile, news that the weakest demon lord of all has gained a mentor begins to spread. On the 70th floor of the realm, Lord Andromalius scoffs at the rumor, saying she is still nothing but trash. Up on the floor above, Lord Dantalion demands that his subordinates bring him only information that yields a profit. On the 68th floor of the realm, Lord Decarabia analyzes the news with intrigue while holding a glowing crystal. While some find the rumor completely unamusing, others find the news about the new mentor extremely interesting. The butler of a certain demon lord states that he investigated this non-fellow but could discover absolutely nothing. Upon hearing the answer, the beautiful demon lord gives a mysterious smile in her bathtub, finding the whole situation curious. She decides to get out of the water and asks to have everything prepared because it has been a while since she went out to have some fun. Meanwhile, back at the castle, little Seer walks determinedly down the hallway to finish doing her homework. The little girl ends up running into the cheerful maid, Cecily, along the way and decides to put her teachings into practice. She stops right in front of the maid, but suddenly feels embarrassed by the warm, friendly greeting she receives, nervous about the situation. The little demon lord tries to gather the courage to speak to her longtime loyal companion. Cecily wags her foxtail happily and asks what her cute boss desires with such a serious look on her face. Pointing her task scroll at the maid, she orders in a firm voice for her to start cleaning everything up. Cecily is completely taken aback to hear her gentle master deliver a direct order with so much authority. She begins to sweep the floor using magic, noticing that the little girl is holding the mentor's training scroll. The maid spots the training journal in the little one's hands and immediately understands the new teacher's brilliant plan. She realizes he is teaching the little girl how to give orders naturally and decides to cooperate with the homework. Cecily makes a respectful bow and guarantees that she will follow every single one of the little lord's orders from then on. Seer's eyes sparkle with happiness upon seeing that her first command as a leader actually worked. Completely overjoyed, the little girl skips away toward her lesson while Cecily melts from the sheer cuteness of the scene. She goes hum-singing happily through the castle garden, completely unaware of some strange whispers coming from the bushes. Arriving at her lesson, Seer finds the mentor and the butler talking and catches their attention in a very cute manner. She hands over her completely finished task and receives a head pat from the mentor, who promises to give her a wonderful present. The young man suggests giving her teddy bear a new plushy friend so that the toy will no longer feel lonely. Seer loves the wonderful idea, but Butler Kane starts breaking into a cold sweat of worry in the background at his suggestion. Suddenly, the girl's expression changes to a sad look, and she says she does not need anything, leaving the mentor confused. The young man remembers that the castle's financial situation is terrible and decides he needs to step in to help. He gently pats her head and asks in a sweet voice if she would let him take care of all the realm's finances. The little lord looks at him startled and surprised by the proposal to take on such a massive responsibility. Kane looks on in disbelief, realizing that the realm's budget would be used to buy a toy, and questions the mentor. The young mentor asks the butler if he would not like to see little Seer extremely happy with a new plushie. The glass-wearing older gentleman is visibly shaken and left speechless, having been hit right in his soft spot for affection. Kane imagines the super cute scene of the little girl hugging two teddy bears and admits he would love to see her. That joyful nod calms the butler down, explaining that he understands his concern but reassures him that he has no interest in the realm's money. He places a hand on Kane's shoulder and explains in a friendly manner that the two of them simply possess different strengths. The young mentor promises he will focus on what he does best to turn little Seer into the greatest symbol of the realm. Touched by the teacher's kind words, the little girl timidly tugs on his cape and calls out to him in a sweet voice. She looks right into his eyes with great hope and says she fully trusts her dear new mentor. The little one flashes a beautiful smile and asks him to make lots of money, leaving the young man incredibly happy and flustered. He smiles back confidently, knowing that very soon, gold will start pouring into the castle vaults all on its own. Nan claps his hands excitedly to kick off the day's lesson, while the butler watches the two of them with newfound hope. Under the butler's watchful supervision, the teacher guides the girl to direct the flow of mana throughout her little body. The young man is marveled to note that the girl possesses a colossal release of energy that goes far beyond what was expected. He realizes she is keeping up with the pace of the lessons, that he does not even need to worry about her progress. Nan decides to end the training for today by clapping his hands, even though he really wanted to test the girl's limits a bit more. The little girl collapses exhausted onto the grass, while the worried butler notes that her physical endurance is still very low. The mentor praises her good performance and suggests a quick rest before they begin the day's physical training. Shortly after, the little lord has already recovered her energy and runs happily through the garden, hugging her teddy bear. The young man watches from afar and asks Kane if there is a special reason why she is so attached to that toy. The butler sadly shares that the plushie was the last gift the former demon lord gave to his 5-year-old daughter Nan, remembers that her father's passing is a crucial plot point in the story, but he knows she will only discover the details in the future. Suddenly, a castle guard comes running in desperately, calling for the butler and putting both of them on high alert. The little lord's servant named Meldon arrives running with a letter sent by Lord Moraeus from the floor above. The butler becomes deeply concerned about that lord's potential demands, and the young man quickly senses the gravity of the situation. In that demon realm, the change of just a single ruler is enough to alter the entire local balance of power. But the teacher flashes a confident smile and informs the anxious butler that this visit is exactly what he was waiting for. A few days later, the Lord's carriage finally arrives at the castle, and the young man tells the butler to try to relax a bit. The vehicle's coachman shouts commandingly to open the gates, and the teacher knows they are about to be tested. The young man notices that even the simple coachman of that carriage possesses an intimidating and highly unusual presence. What they do not know is that the coachman is actually a giant, legendary demon who is disguised on that carriage. The castle servants are left in absolute shock upon hearing the teacher call that mysterious servant by his real name. The disguised demon gives an intrigued smile, realizing that the young mentor managed to uncover his true identity. At that moment, the carriage door swings open, revealing a stunning demon lord named Citri arriving from the floor above. The castle servants are left completely breathless and jaw-dropped as they gaze upon the stunning beauty of the visitor. The young man makes a respectful bow and greets the powerful Lord Citri in an extremely polite and formal manner. She walks commandingly and is surprised to see that the mentor managed to unmask her legendary guard so easily. Non replies with a sarcastic smile, stating that an ordinary person would never be chosen to be the demon lord's mentor. The disguised guardian fumes in silence. Seeing a mere mentor speak in such a bold and disrespectful manner to his lady, Non asks directly what the reason for the surprise visit is and suggests they have a friendly chat inside the palace. The young man firmly notes that this territory belongs to Seer and therefore demands an acceptable reason for their entry there. Lord Citri fumes in silence upon realizing she is being treated with such insolence by a mere low-class mentor. She takes a deep breath and states she only came to discuss important business, which makes the young mentor change his tone and welcome them. The guardian notices that the teacher was very clever to use the Lord's presence to assert that Seer still commands the place. The young man apologizes for the initial rudeness, explaining that he needed to protect his master, and guides them to the drawing room. Citri orders her loyal guardian to wait outside, while she goes in to settle the castle's financial issues. Walking through the hall, the upper floor lord comments with disdain about the massive reduction in the number of servants in that castle. Cain lowers his head, explaining sadly that the realm's financial situation is terrible, and the young man knows exactly who is to blame. Non invites the visitor to sit down, while she asks arrogantly when little Seer will show up for the meeting. The woman settles herself elegantly on the sofa and warns that she has extremely urgent financial matters to discuss with her. The teacher observes her closely and realizes she is trying to use her charm and seduction to throw him completely off focus. The young man gives a slight smirk and informs her that since he manages the castle's finances, she will have to negotiate directly with him. The Lord begins to explain that her soldiers passed away defending Seer's territory and therefore demands a high compensation. Non questions who ordered those soldiers to be sent, and she replies completely cynically that she did it out of pure kindness and generosity. Hearing that blatant excuse, the teacher cannot contain himself and calls her a scammer without the slightest hint of shame. Lord Citri freezes in complete shock, wondering if she actually just heard that insult from a mere mentor. The young man calmly takes a sip of his tea and mockingly confirms that she heard every single word he just said perfectly well. Furious at the young man's tremendous audacity, the woman slams her hand onto the table, knocking over the teacup and screaming in anger at him. She stands up, releasing a terrifying aura of fire, and rants that he has no right to speak that way to a superior lord. Non remains seated calmly and asks why she is so angry just for being called what she actually is. The teacher drops her thugs to the floor with a simple gesture and throws it in her face that she is just trying to extort the girl. The woman's eyes turn red with pure fury, and she screams that the arrogance of that mere mentor has crossed all lines. She prepares to attack, releasing a destructive magical power that makes the entire drawing room shake from the force of the impact. Citri warns with a murderous look that this terrible attack will be the well-deserved punishment for him being so insolent to her. A massive explosion of fire is launched at the young man, but he remains seated calmly, sipping his tea without moving an inch. Non thinks to himself that he was trying to resolve things peacefully, just to spare that lord's pride. With an extremely cold and focused look, the teacher simply raises his hand and snaps his fingers right in the middle of the fire. In a fraction of a second, the woman's entire destructive flame attack is cut down and dissipated into thin air without leaving a single trace. Lord Citri stands open-mouthed and falls into utter despair upon seeing that her strongest spell was snuffed out with a simple snap. The young man stands up and walks slowly in her direction, emanating a dark and terrifying presence that leaves her paralyzed. He asks if they can finally start having a civilized and intelligent conversation like civilized people. With his golden eyes glowing intensely, he approaches her, saying he has an excellent business proposal to make. The woman looks behind him and panics as she glimpses the silhouette of the white whale, which reveals the true identity of that demon. Citri gets irritated by the young man's audacity and asks if a nobody like him really thinks he can make her a proposal. But the mentor counters firmly, stating that this proposal is of total interest to her as it involves the seal binding her powers. The demon lord points her finger indignantly and asks if he truly believes an ordinary person has the right to propose a deal to her. The young man reveals that the matter concerns the seal placed upon her, leaving her completely speechless by demonstrating such vast knowledge. Citri draws her dagger in irritation and commands him to get lost if he only came to repeat what everyone already knows about the seal. The mentor surprises her by explaining that the seal stone binding her energy is kept on a much higher level floor. With a confident smile and a glow at his fingertips, the young man summons a scroll into the air and proposes they close a grand deal. He tosses the floating contract in her direction and promises he will help her break that terrible restriction. Seal once and for all, Citri catches the document with just one finger and asks with heavy suspicion how he plans to achieve something so difficult. The young mentor simply flashes a mysterious smile and replies that she has just witnessed a sample of that great power. He makes it clear that the entire, absurd demonstration from earlier was just a small fraction of his true magical power. Intrigued by such strength, the demon lord asks who he is, and the young man replies proudly that he is Lord Seer's mentor. With a serene look, highly confident in the plan's success, the young man asks warmly if she is ready to sign the paper. Little Seer announces that she has finished writing the terms of the agreement, which guarantees troops and safety for the castle without losses. The young man knows she agreed to sign the deal only because of the total support clause he promised to provide for her forces. Citri observes the paper thoughtfully and begins to consider if that display of strength truly was just a fraction of his power. She cracks a subtle smile upon realizing that this dangerous partnership is a gamble well worth the risk. The woman demands that he also sign the contract with blood, and the young man agrees instantly while cutting his finger with a small knife. The young mentor settles himself on the floor and presses his bloody finger directly onto the sheet to seal the pact once and for all. The blood mark containing the fingerprints of Citri and the young man glows intensely on the paper, making the terms of that alliance official. The magical scroll begins to emanate a strong reddish light as the blood oath is consummated between both sides. With red chains of magical energy binding his wrist, the young man elegantly states that he is counting on Citri's help. Citri also feels the energy of the oath bind itself to her arm and replies seriously that the feeling is completely mutual. The mentor kneels beside little Seer and happily shares that from now on, Lord Citri will be a great ally of theirs. The little girl gives a cute bow of gratitude, and Lord Citri averts her gaze embarrassedly, telling them to try to get along. The young man jokes, saying she needs to learn good manners, and the woman accepts the scolding a bit awkwardly so as not to lose her composure. Flustered by the whole situation, the demon lord timidly plays with her own hair and tries to speak in a friendlier manner. She looks at the little girl with a completely flushed face and formally addresses her by the name of Lord Seer to show respect. The mentor praises her attitude and informs her that he will now explain the practical details so they can truly fulfill the agreement. With a massive smile on his face, the young man surprisingly reveals that the powerful Lord Citri will also become a student of his there. The woman screams in outrage at that absurdity, and the mentor counters by reminding her that despite her past glory, she is quite weak today. He keeps throwing harsh truths in her face, saying that currently, she is nothing more than an ordinary and completely forgettable lord. She flies into a rage at his heavy words and complains while pointing her finger, while the young man amuses himself with her desperate reaction. The mentor shifts to a serious expression and comments that she probably thinks her evolution has ended and there is no way left to grow, but he guarantees with absolute certainty that she can still get much stronger, leaving her completely shocked by that statement. The demon lord clenches her fist tightly, thinking that if the advice comes from someone as powerful as him, it might actually be true. The mentor remembers that in the game, she truly became a great ally to Seer after regaining her strength through hard work. She warns him not to joke about serious matters, and the young man replies that he does not play around with that before sending her back home. The young man asks her to visit him whenever she can, and she screams indignantly, saying a mere mentor is the one who should go to her realm. Seer grabs the teacher's leg with a highly irritated look and screams that he is her exclusive mentor and is not going anywhere. Citri sighs defeated in the face of the little girl's jealousy and accepts the arrangement, saying she will come once a week for the lessons. The mentor agrees to the proposal very calmly, and the woman gets annoyed, thinking he is playing hard to get with her, with a mysterious gaze. The young man answers only that she will discover the reason for all of that much faster than she imagines. The alliance with the Lord was successfully closed, but the teacher knows the castle still has many other problems to solve outside the castle. Citri's advisors complain heavily about having to stand around waiting in that courtyard doing nothing. The alligator advisor gets annoyed by his colleagues' complaints and tells him to crawl back to his master if he is so unhappy. Vice Commander Varuna appears with crossed arms and an intimidating look, telling the two of them to keep talking and see what happens. The alligator advisor quickly apologizes, and the feared commander orders them to stop talking nonsense and get back to training. Varuna turns and comments to the commander that the troops' morale is terrible and that the training sessions are a complete mess. Sitting on the castle wall, Commander Rinel Raza replies calmly that she already expected this agitation and there is not much to be done. A few days pass, and the young mentor sighs thoughtfully as he tries to deal with all that commotion in the castle. Citri slams her hand hard onto the table in outrage and screams, asking if the young man truly wants to pick a nasty fight with her. He explains calmly that he is very busy organizing her troops and therefore has no free time left for anything else. With an ironic smile, he says he would be immensely grateful if she decided to personally help out with this problem. The woman flies into a rage at the request for help and mutters angrily, promising that she will still manage to get her revenge on him. The young man mocks her, asking if she was going to promise revenge, and says that all this hatred at least serves to motivate her. The mentor looks at the little girl in his lap and asks if she could put the finishing touches on the next phase of the plan. The next day, he and the little lord meet up with Commander Rin, who asks what brings them to the training field. The young man explains that they went down there to analyze where little Seer will practice her sword skills. Varuna gives a mocking smile and asks if fixing the soldier's mess is just a simple task for the mentor. The mentor replies that maintaining order should be common sense and cynically admits that he has never led troops before. Varuna warns that uniting military forces from such different backgrounds is not an easy task, like the young man imagines. The teacher smiles mockingly and suggests that the vice commander just keep an eye out to see how it is really done. Varuna stares back at the young man with seriousness and warns that he will observe his every move very closely. Shortly after, Citri's advisors appear staring at two crossed swords on the ground, completely failing to understand. Over on the third training field, the soldiers whisper in surprise as they notice the presence of the young demon lord there. The young man analyzes Varuna from afar and recognizes that he is an extremely skilled warrior and highly loyal to the realm. He knows this loyalty is exclusive to Seer and decides to use the moment to make him obey his commands. The mentor greets the alligator advisor in a friendly manner and formally introduces himself as the little lord's tutor. The alligator warrior shakes his hand tightly and says he knows him very well for having steered them away from their former leader. The young man replies mockingly that he did the right thing by taking in some poor lost souls like them into the castle. The alligator warrior flies into a rage at the joke and asks if the young man thinks he can say whatever he wants just because he is the mentor. The mentor maintains absolute calm and merely comments that the handshake was a bit too strong and rude. Suddenly, the young man squeezes his hand back with an absurd amount of force that makes the alligator warrior groan in pain. The reptile holds his own aching hand in shock, and the mentor warns him in a serious tone to watch his words. He points out that their new leader is standing right there and asks if he has the nerve to pick a fight with the person who is training her. He questions if the young man is insulting their former leader, and the alligator begins to shake nervously from the pressure. The young man touches Seer's shoulder and questions if the soldiers still believe they owe total obedience to Lord Citri. He lifts the little girl up into the air and shouts for everyone to see clearly that their one and true leader now is little Seer. The alligator warrior is completely mesmerized by the girl's cuteness, but tries to pull himself together, saying that it does not matter. He shouts that his only leader is Citri, and the mentor praises his determination for keeping his word until the end. The young man begins to release a dark energy and warns that if that is how things are, he has no choice but to take action. With overwhelming power, the mentor forces every warrior in the courtyard to drop to their knees on the ground under extreme pressure. Varuna feels the heavy energy crushing the area and can barely breathe as he realizes the absurd level of his mana. He coldly warns that he has no need for disobedient dogs and declares that this will be their final chance. The mentor asks if they prefer to remain stuck in the past and pass away right there, or gamble their lives on a new future. The alligator proudly explains that as demons, they must obey the orders of the one they once swore total loyalty to. The young man smiles upon seeing such fidelity and says that loyal warriors like them will be extremely useful for his plans. Suddenly, all that crushing energy vanishes, leaving the soldiers confused as they try to understand what just happened. Citri arrives screaming at her soldiers and asks if the idiots still have not understood that she and Seer are now allies. One warrior tries to argue that the alliance is just a piece of paper, but she tells him to shut his mouth and guarantees it is very real. She explains all clumsily that the union of the floors represents an unbreakable bond that everyone must respect. The soldier is left confused by the explanation, and the woman averts her gaze seriously, saying that this union is vital for the war. The alligator warrior apologizes for the rudeness, and Lord Citri screams angrily, telling him to stop calling her leader. The woman points her finger right in her generals' faces and demands that they repeat out loud who they serve now. All the warriors bow in an imposing reverence and shout proudly that they are now the army of Lord Seer. The little girl is left shocked by the loud tribute, while Vice Commander Varuna watches everything, unable to believe the scene. The Lord flashes a confident smile at the young man, who responds with a thumbs up in approval of her beautiful work. Seer hugs her teddy bear affectionately and mimics the thumbs up sign with a cute look of admiration. The two of them make the victory thumbs up sign together and celebrate the success of that union with a beautiful smile on their faces. Citri questions if things will run more smoothly in the castle now and receives a highly positive response. The young mentor pats Seer's head and asks her to gently let go of his hand just for a brief moment. But the little girl reacts by holding the teacher's hand even tighter, demonstrating that she does not want to leave his side for anything. The young man gently asks her to let go of his hand to make things easier, but the little one responds with a very firm no. The girl makes a very cute pout, insisting she does not want to let go of him, and the young man realizes there is no fighting that stubbornness. The mentor decides to pick her up as an alternative, and Lord Citri shakes with anger upon seeing that cute scene in the courtyard. The proud lord screams angrily, demanding the training he had promised to give her earlier. The young man calms the woman down, saying they can train perfectly fine, even with him holding little Seer in his lap. A dense, dark smoke begins to circulate around the mentor's feet, and he warns that today's special lesson starts right now. A massive storm of dark energy suddenly arises in the courtyard, leaving the demon lord completely in shock. The teacher challenges the woman to try to land just a single blow on him in the middle of that immense darkness surrounding them. Citri flies into a rage at the test conditions and questions indignantly if this type of training will actually help her. The young man merely gives a confident smile and guarantees with all the certainty in the world that the training will indeed work. The woman tries to charge at the young man, but is completely crushed by the intimidating presence emanating from his body. She drops to her knees on the ground exhausted while the mentor warns that he is infinitely stronger than she has ever been in her entire life. He commands her to try to overcome that crushing mana pressure to manage to land at least a single attack on him. The warrior tries to stand up with great difficulty while wondering where that monstrous amount of energy is coming from. The young man knows that making his allies stronger is the best way to expand and guarantee the safety of Seer's realm. The tutor mocks her exhaustion, and the woman complains heavily, feeling that she is being extremely humiliated by that training. He suggests she quit if she is feeling insulted, and the demon lord gets even more irritated by the mockery. He explains that the location where her powers are sealed possesses an absurd gravity that demands immediate adaptation. The mentor gestures, saying that this extreme effort will expand her magic circuits naturally as a bonus. Seer comments that their ally seems to be suffering a lot, and the teacher asks her to observe every detail of the lesson closely. The little girl gets confused by the young man's advice and questions the reason for having to pay so much attention to someone else's suffering. He reveals that in the very near future, she too will have to go through the exact same intensive magic training evening arrives on the training field, and the young man jokes, telling her not to overexert herself due to her advanced age. Completely drained and trembling on the ground, the proud lord screams, telling the freeloading mentor to shut his mouth once and for all. She swears she will land at least one blow today, while the young man and the girl sip a relaxing tea, watching front row. The tutor notices that Citri is already starting to adapt to the magical pressure and mentally praises her incredible willpower. Little Seer asks to have one more lesson with him, but the young man reminds her that they already studied plenty during the morning today. The little girl looks at him with eyes shining so bright that the teacher realizes it is impossible to say no to that cuteness. He gives in to the cute request and decides to assign a more advanced lesson. Based on the practical content they learned earlier, Citri notices the sudden change of mana in the environment and looks on confused, failing to understand what the two are planning to do there. The young man decides to pause Citri's test and asks his dear student what she learned in the morning lesson. The girl explains all proudly that she learned to collect and use the mana that stays scattered, floating freely through the air. The teacher questions how she goes about capturing this scattered energy, and the little lord goes pensive for a few moments. She replies all happily that one just has to ask the energy itself for help, and the mentor lets out a laugh, praising the brilliant answer. The girl asks how one speaks to mana, and the young man calms the little one down, saying that their own energy handles that conversation. He demonstrates the process by releasing small, brilliant golden sparks directly from the tips of his own fingers. The young man guides the scattered energy around until it becomes friendly and joins their main flow of mana there. Next, he uses that combined force to conjure an absurdly powerful magic that lights up the entire courtyard sky. The young mentor asks with a smile if she would like to try doing the same, and the girl accepts the challenge super excitedly. The little girl extends her determined tiny hand and concentrates to her absolute limit to begin drawing the energy around her. Small beams of red light begin to dance and accumulate rapidly on the tips of the young lord's tiny fingers under the teacher's watchful instructions. The girl guides the energy very calmly before Citri's shocked gaze in the background. The upper floor lord is left completely breathless upon noticing that such surreal force belongs to a child of just 7 years old. Citri gulps, deeply impressed by the girl's potential, and decides she needs to protect that alliance at all costs. The mentor praises her excellent progress and calmly commands her to draw all that energy back into herself. The little one comments that she feels a rather strange sensation, and the young man explains it is just the contact with external mana. The teacher guides the girl to use that accumulated strength to imagine an intense flame burning directly in her mind. A terrifying and gigantic skull of fire materializes in the air, roaring intensely right before the little one's eyes. But soon the large creature transforms into a small and cute flame, floating docilely right on the tip of his finger. The mentor asks the girl to copy exactly what he did, while Lord Citri screams from the background, telling him to wait. She questions indignantly what the young man is teaching the child, and the mentor calmly asks if there is any problem. The woman reveals in shock that the magic taught is an ancient spell, and the young man keeps pretending he knew nothing about it. The young man confirms it is an ancient magic, but deflects the topic, saying mysteriously that he needs to finish the lesson. He gives a gentle smile to the little girl and asks if she feels ready to reproduce what she just saw there. The little one closes her eyes in concentration and begins to visualize the intense flames according to her teacher's instructions. A few ancient and glowing runes made entirely of fire begin to manifest, floating in the middle of the courtyard. The magical energy condenses rapidly above her tiny hand, and the fire runes begin to glow intensely. The girl manages to create her own cute little flame and receives praise from her proud mentor for her excellent work. The teacher guides the student to practice this energy gathering frequently to manage to use it whenever she needs. The young man points out that the blow challenge only applies to Citri's training, and she screams angrily, denying what he implied. The woman then asks him to teach that ancient spell to her as well, but the young man turns down the request very dryly. She complains, saying she is also his student, and the mentor coldly explains that he does not trust her enough for that yet. The young man sees a great opportunity to make more profit and suggests that he might consider teaching if they get closer. Citri turns completely red and embarrassed, misinterpreting what the young man meant by getting closer. The woman trembles with embarrassment but accepts the condition, mentally stating she will do everything to manage to get stronger. She builds up courage and asks embarrassedly what his ideal type of woman is, leaving the mentor extremely confused. The young man clarifies that he was referring to military trust between nations, leaving the lord completely flustered and annoyed. She screams, saying he should have been clearer at the start, and the young man says the important thing is that she understood everything. The little lord watches that bizarre scene with a confused look, failing to comprehend half of the nonsense the two talked about. In the office, the young man thinks about the character he possessed and how, being a legendary demon, he harbors major secrets. He recalls that, in the game, the true identity of that great demon was an absolute mystery and highly powerful. The young man jots down his concerns on a clipboard and decides he must not waste energy on what he does not yet understand. He focuses on the realm's urgent problems and decides to deal with each of them step by step to guarantee their victory. The mentor concludes that the greatest urgency right now is territorial expansion, but knows it is still far too early to attack the humans. He plans an assault against the upper floor neighbor, but suddenly spots something intriguing on top of his desk. The next day, the little lord comes running into the office, calling for her teacher in an extremely joyful manner. Commander Rin opens the doors and apologizes, explaining that the little girl insisted heavily on accompanying her there. The young man calms the commander down and thanks her for coming to the office, since he really needs her strategic opinion today. Rin El Raza stands shocked and asks in great surprise if the plan truly involves starting a territorial expansion right now. The commander explains that a direct confrontation against the neighboring lord would be difficult due to the difference in raw power. The young man hands over a strategy document for her to read while explaining the clever plan he drew up in detail. Upon reading the paper, she realizes the invasion is completely viable as long as they manage to avoid a direct physical confrontation. The young man asks what she thinks of the strategy and guarantees that it is an excellent move for them to use at this moment. Rin suggests a secret mission with infiltrators, but fears that working with Citri's army might cause some internal infighting. The mentor guarantees everything will work out fine because Lord Citri's soldiers learned their lesson and will obey without complaining. The commander suggests assembling the new soldiers into a separate legion to avoid potential friction and unnecessary fights. She adds that this strategy is also excellent for directing the loyalty of all the new soldiers towards Seer. The mentor agrees with the idea of creating the legion to win the soldiers' affection using Citri's own funds. The teacher asks for Seer's opinion, and the cute girl replies super happily that she agrees with any decision of his in the courtyard. Lord Citri suddenly volunteers to help with the military mission on the upper floor with a look of determination. She complains, thinking he does not trust her strength, but the young man explains that the upper floor lord is the real danger. Suddenly, the little girl climbs down from her chair, and the young man asks curiously where she is going in such a rush. At that moment, Seer gets down on her knees on the floor beside Citri and shouts in a cute way that the two of them should do that training together. She says that training with company is much less tiring, and the mentor cannot resist, letting out a chuckle at so much cuteness. The Lord looks at the little one beside her completely surprised, failing to understand the reason why she is trying so hard there. The woman sighs exhausted, thinking to herself that dealing with such a pure and innocent little girl wears one out in a different way. The mentor points out that her plushie ended up getting all dirty on the ground, and the girl despairs upon seeing her beloved toy like that. The mentor calms the girl down, saying they can give her a bath along with the teddy bear to clean off all that dirt. The young man asks Butler Kane to look after the young lord for a moment, and the older gentleman accepts the command promptly. Citri comments impressed that he seems very used to dealing with children, and the young man responds thoughtfully. The mentor explains that he merely thinks of the easiest way so that Seer can manage to comprehend and act according to the lessons. The young man jokes, saying Citri acts without thinking first, and the demon lord screams in outrage, denying his accusation. He snaps his fingers, suggesting a pause to the teasing so that they can refocus on the floor invasion plan. The young man questions the reason for so much determination, and she makes a joke, implying the upper floor lord is an absolute fool. The warrior points her finger, revealing with seriousness that her troops were also already preparing for war. The young man becomes concerned upon realizing that the war is happening much ahead of the time predicted in the game's original story. The mentor accepts the help calmly, and the woman calls him shameless before asking what her mission will be. He promises that the partnership will bring great returns for her and calms her worries about potential losses in the agreement. Citri quickly deduces that his plan is just to feign an attack, and the mentor claps his hands, praising her quick thinking. The Lord questions if it is worth serving as bait in the mission, and the young man shows a confidential document as an answer. She reads the paper and discovers that the upper floor lord insulted a local faction and that there is now a rift between them. The warrior agrees that this foolishness is a golden opportunity, and the mentor reveals he intends to bring the rebels over to their side. Citri demands a highly solid plan, and the mentor reveals he will send Commander Rin as the official negotiator for that mission. Discussing the split of funds, the young man suggests dividing everything equally, and the warrior admits she was surprised by this. The young man winks, saying warmly that they are allies, and that maintaining this long-term partnership is worth any effort. The woman mockingly reminds him that he did not believe in her before, but the young man merely smiles and says the decision is entirely hers. Suddenly, the mentor releases a massive aura of dark energy that makes Lord Citri let out a sharp shriek of despair and fright. The teacher smiles sardonically, telling her to get back to training, and the poor lord complains heavily about all that cruelty. Shortly after, little Seer appears running happily with her clean teddy bear while the butler tries to catch up to her. The young man picks the cute little girl up in his arms and praises the clean toy while she opens a beautiful smile of immense happiness. He notices a red streak in her hair and asks curiously if she decided to dye her hair behind his back. Butler Kane approaches and proudly explains that her bloodline manages to store magical energy within their very hair. Kane reveals that she stored energy during the last lesson, and the young man goes pensive, noting that this never happened in the game. The older gentleman confirms that the color changes according to use, and reveals that the former king had half his hair red from so much power. The mentor realizes excitedly that with this secret ability, the little girl manages to conjure incredibly powerful spells. The teacher pats her head and warns that from now on, she will need to practice this energy gathering a lot. The young mentor turns toward the butler and asks directly where Commander Rin is at this exact moment. Meanwhile, night falls silently over the 70th floor, which is commanded by the demon lord Andromalius. Commander Rin delivers the invasion order, and the highly trained soldiers advance stealthily through the village streets. Rin recognizes the efficiency of Citri's subordinates and is impressed by the precision with which the mentor planned everything. With extremely quiet and precise steps, the warriors land on top of one of the roofs of that small village. The invasion army quickly positions itself high up in the dark trees of the forest, awaiting the signal to advance. The winged warrior points to a wooden cabin just ahead and reports that he detected nothing suspicious at first glance. She firmly explains that they are there to recruit the rebel faction and guarantee the conquest of the new territory. Vice Commander Varuna questions if that negotiation is truly possible, and the leader replies that she merely follows orders. Wasting no time with doubts, the commander orders the advance, and the group moves at lightning speed toward the cabin. They silently approach the cabin in the middle of the clearing, and the leader warns that this distance is already enough. Suddenly, a warrior from the faction notices their presence and launches a swift attack that nearly grazes Varuna's face. Varuna and Rin quickly draw their swords upon being surrounded by the rebel defenders who emerge from that cabin. One of the rebels points his spear, demanding identification, and the commander mentally praises the warrior's preparation. She introduces herself as an envoy of Seer, while the imposing leader of the rebels steps out of the cabin, puffing on his pipe. The robust horned demon glares at the group with suspicion and asks who among them is the official representative of the Empire. With a cold and extremely serious look, Commander Rin takes a step forward and declares that she leads the negotiation. The rebels recognize the commander as Win El Raza and whisper in shock, believing the legendary generals were dead. She proudly declares that she left that legendary title behind and now acts solely as the blade of Lord Seer. While the generals wait outside, the leader questions if the little one truly has what it takes to dominate the floor. She guarantees the plan is entirely viable, and the robust rebel leader asks how she intends to prove that statement. Rin opens a glowing treasure box and firmly guarantees that she and Lord Citri can bring down the enemy all by themselves. Aaron smokes his pipe and warns that in a real war, they will need a local guide who knows the terrain very well. The commander says mysteriously that she cannot reveal all the plans, but guarantees she will share just one detail. She states that even if there were 100 warriors as strong as her, nobody would manage to lay a finger on the mentor protecting Seer. The rebel gulps, remembering that the 4 legendary generals held the power of a demon lord, and is deeply impressed. Aaron tries to laugh, thinking it is a joke, but the commander stares back seriously, asking if she looks like someone who plays around. He says they do not need help if they are so strong, and she explains they need discretion so as not to alert the upper floors. She glares at him with a threatening look, and warns that if he decides to betray them, he will not leave that situation alive either. Aaron gulps, wondering if that is a real threat, but admits he knows the feared power of the generals all too well. The rebel leader decides to hear the proposal, and she asks for free passage for the troops and help to corner the enemy lord. She offers riches and a solid new alliance, suggesting he replace the current ruler with a new force in power. Citri quickly deduces that his plan is just to feign an attack, and the mentor claps his hands, praising her quick thinking. The Lord questions if it is worth serving as bait in the mission, and the young man shows a confidential document as an answer. The mentor notices that the warrior is looking a bit hesitant in the hallway and asks if she would like to tell him anything else. She apologizes for the boldness, but asks directly why someone so powerful chose to be the young lord's mentor. The commander argues that a tutor position is something very simple and small in the face of all his absurd skills. Rin confesses she cannot understand the reason why he chose precisely the weakest and most undervalued floor in the realm. The young man deduces that she fears a potential betrayal or coup d'etat and jokingly admits that this chance is never entirely zero. He realizes her seriousness and thinks that if he told the truth about the game, she would certainly think he had completely lost his mind. The young man decides to give a slight smirk and replies very sincerely that he accepted the job simply because he thought it would be fun. The warrior is left confused by the answer, and he explains that training the weakest demon lord is a highly interesting challenge. With a focused look, he reveals that there is nothing more exciting than imagining the day when Seer will rule everything. Rin asks if he does this out of pure personal whim, and he admits that at first yes, but that now he has truly grown attached to the realm. He flashes a massive smile and says the main reason is because they possess the cutest demon lord in the entire realm. He begins to list the qualities of the people there and highlights Butler Kane as an extremely loyal and firm strategist. The teacher praises the kindness of Leah, who is responsible for looking after all the internal matters of the palace with great care. He highlights the cleverness of the cheerful maid, Cecily, and praises Magul, saying he is the best chef in the entire world. The young man adds that despite his rebellious way, Vice Commander Varuna possesses incredible and unquestionable skills. To finish, the mentor praises the commander herself, calling her strong and beautiful, leaving the young woman completely red with embarrassment. The young man says in a teasing tone that he is merely stating obvious facts, and the commander stammers, unsure how to react to the compliment. The mentor affectionately confesses that he likes everyone there while thinking about how incredible it is to see the game characters alive right there. He sincerely guarantees that he will never be the first to betray them, provided they do not decide to abandon him in the future. Either Rin thanks him very much for the frank answer, and the mentor gently explains that her loyalty should be directed solely to Seer. The young man praises her protective attitude toward the little girl and kindly asks the tired commander to go get some rest. She leaves the office with a subtle smile on her face, thinking about how blessed little Seer is to have so many good people. The next day, the little lord enters the teacher's room all joyfully, and he asks what brings her there before lesson time. She shares that she just came to pass the time, and the young man takes advantage of the moment to give a small practical lesson on real economics. The teacher shows a complaint regarding crops destroyed by humans, and asks what she would do to help the starving people. The girl suggests sending the stockpiled food for free as emergency relief, but selling the rest at a very low price. He questions what to do if the farmers have no money at the moment, and the little girl goes pensive, trying to figure it out. The mentor explains that for difficult situations like this, the Empire usually utilizes a method called the grain loan system. He draws an explanatory diagram showing that the peasants borrow the grain and return it all during the next harvest. The teacher concludes by saying that this way the hunger is resolved without the realm suffering losses, and the little girl loves the explanation. Leah knocks on the door politely and interrupts the conversation to gently inform them that it is already time for the little one's snack. The mentor tells her to go have her snack, and the little girl's eyes light up with joy at the thought of eating a delicious pudding. The maid informs her that today's snack is actually strawberry cake, and the girl celebrates, saying she loves cake very much too. The little girl stops right at the office door and looks back thoughtfully, leaving the teacher curious about her behavior. She flashes a radiant smile and invites the young man in a cute way, saying her dear teacher must have a snack along with her. Leah is surprised by the generous invitation, and the little lord embarrassedly confirms that she does want to share the strawberry cake. The young man notices in shock that she did not use formal terms, and remembers that in the game, she never shared her snack with anyone. The young man walks down the long hallway, eager to finally try the strawberry cake that the little girl praised so much. He thinks to himself that he has finally won the little lord's trust, since she agreed to share her snack. Suddenly, Butler Kane appears with a look of worry in the hallway and calls him over to handle an urgent matter. Kane places an envelope in his hands, warning in a serious manner that a mysterious letter arriving from the upper floor has come. The young man reads the short message saying that everything is already prepared and cracks a dark smile, knowing his plan worked in another castle. A fist slams hard onto the table in immense outrage upon discovering that Lord Citri has declared war on them. Andromalius, the feared demon lord of the 70th floor, flies into a rage at the news and rants against his rivals. The irritated lord scoffs at his advisor's warning of caution and says his rival is nothing but a powerless fool. He sits on his stone throne and begins to analyze who the potential allies might be who would provide backing for his rival. Advisor Vermilion approaches, respectfully, and reports the recent rumors about an alliance between the two floors. He adds that spies confirmed frequent visits from the rival to the floor below, revealing that they are acting together. The leader laughs out loud upon learning this, but admits they cannot ignore the military power of the legendary generals from the neighboring floor. The advisor also warns that there are rumors that the new royal mentor hired in the region is an extremely unusual demon. The demon lord doubts the mentor's qualities, but the subordinate guarantees that he was the one who orchestrated that entire union. The robust floor leader glares angrily upon discovering who was responsible for convincing his rival to declare war. Advisor Vermilion suggests launching the combat with full massive force to crush the enemy troops all at once. He asks for permission to approach and whispers a terrible secret into Andromalius's ear, leaving him completely shocked. The wicked ruler flashes a sadistic smile and approves the cruel idea, promising to show the real difference in power to his rivals. He looks around and questions the absence of the other local rebel leaders, receiving confirmation that none of them came. The tyrant flies into an extreme rage at that insubordination and orders them to bring the leader Aaron to his presence immediately. Suddenly, a soldier bursts into the grand hall in a noisy rush, screaming that they have an incredibly grave problem. The horned lord demands to know what is happening, and the guard kneels trembling, trying to catch his breath to speak. The anxious messenger reveals that Lord Citri's enemy army has already set up camp right before their castle gates. The demon lord is left completely speechless and begins to break into a cold sweat at the impressive speed of that surprise invasion. He punches the throne in fury, deducing that the rebel Iran must have helped the enemy forces pass without being seen. Vermilion kneels, asking for authorization to launch an immediate counterattack with the troops that are already prepared in the courtyard. All the subordinates present begin to scream furiously, demanding the demise of their rival Citri and the traitor Aaron once and for all. The Horned King delivers the final attack order and commands his forces to march to crush the enemies without any mercy. Back at the castle, the mentor places a metal helmet on the girl and says affectionately for her to hang tight as it is for her safety. The young man picks her up in his arms while she is in armor and promises to give her a slice of strawberry cake if she behaves very well during the missions Amai. Young mentor questions Kane about the start of the invasion, and the elderly man informs him that their military operation must have already begun. The young man walks toward the exit with the little girl in his arms, while the loyal butler wishes them good luck in the coming combat. Before a large blue magical portal, Varuna salutes and reports that all the troops were already waiting for them. The blue-haired warrior explains that the portal opened by Citri will lead them directly inside the 70th floor. The mentor thinks to himself about his allies' total commitment and orders the warriors to begin marching for good, holding little Seer firmly in his arms. The young mentor takes his first steps to cross the magical portal on the palace roof. 3 assassins in black watch the movement from afar and laugh at the foolishness of the defenders there. It is Duncan, the feared commander of the enemy lord's elite unit, who mockingly scoffs upon seeing the castle practically empty. The hooded warrior delivers the immediate invasion order and commands his elite squad to exterminate anyone who stayed behind. The 3 status-positioned assassins confirm the command and prepare their sharp daggers for the carnage before crossing. Vice Commander Varuna demonstrates concern and questions if it is safe to leave the palace so unprotected. He warns about the enemy's dangerous assassin unit, but the mentor calms the young man down, saying he already foresaw this scenario. With a confident, enigmatic smile, the young man guarantees with all certainty that this type of stealth tactic is useless there. Suddenly, one of the invading assassins is hurled backward with brutal force, destroying a piece of palace furniture. The other hooded invader takes a step back, startled seeing his elite companion defeated with extreme ease. He begins to break into a cold sweat of pure panic while trying to comprehend the absurd level of that power that hit him by surprise. An elegant silhouette emerges, dragging the unconscious invader, and comments that he does not recall inviting anyone today. It is the feared butler Kane, holding the enemy as if he were paper, asking with a cold glare, "Who those invaders are?" Vice Commander Varuna asks how long he had known about the invasion, and the young man replies with a look filled with mystery. Next, another one of the invaders is hurled with extreme violence from inside the palace, breaking the glass window. Leah appears smiling at the window with a blood-stained mop and informs the butler that her area is clean. Kane comments, smiling, that he took care of too, and the maid lets out an awkward giggle upon seeing the destruction of the palace. Even Magul, the chef, appears holding a knife and a defeated invader, saying that a rat entered his kitchen. The last invading assassin trembles in panic upon seeing that the mere servants of that palace are combat monsters. The mentor knew that the employees were former elite generals, chosen to defend the place against invasions. Varuna admits to the mentor that he did not like them at first, but now recognizes everyone's brilliant military strategy. Varuna asks for orders, but the young man warns in a serene tone that the vice commander is highly mistaken about one detail. The mentor points to little Seer in her helmet and reminds him that everyone's loyalty must be directed solely to her. Varuna accepts the advice with seriousness and bows before the little girl, asking her to deliver the orders for combat. All cutely, the little one asks the teacher to act as temporary commander, and the young man accepts the invitation with joy. The young man orders Varuna to depart with the troops to provide support for Commander Rin's secret mission on the upper floor. The young man takes the little one in his arms and says goodbye to Kane, while the loyal butler wishes them great luck in battle before a giant blue portal. Varuna approaches and reports that the army was merely awaiting their arrival. He explains that Lord Sitri opened a shortcut portal that will drop them directly onto the realm's 70th floor. The mentor thinks to himself about his allies' total commitment and orders the warriors to begin marching for good. Holding the little one in armor very firmly, the teacher takes the first step and crosses the magical portal. A colossal explosion destroys the enemy castle walls. Announcing that the rebels have initiated the secret invasion, Lord Andromalius rants furiously upon noticing Aaron's betrayal and swears he will rip his head off with his own hands. The subordinates beg for the leader to fall back, but the furious demon says he will kill all the invaders by himself. Another large explosion destroys the palace's internal gates and hurls the defending guards with total violence. The Horned Lord cracks a cruel smile upon noticing that the enemies have just invaded. His own audience chamber, Commander Rin and Vice Commander Varuna lead the elite soldiers, entering triumphantly into the Grand Hall. The furious Horned King orders his elite guards to advance to slaughter the new visitors without mercy. Rin draws her sword with extreme elegance and mockingly comments about that floor's warm reception. Andromalius scoffs at their audacity and swears he will dismember the traitor Aaron with his own demon claws. The commander merely replies with disdain that he will have to try making that death threat in a next life. With terrifying speed, Rin charges against the enemy defense lines, cutting down the guards brutally. The commander's sharp blade collides with Lord Andromalius's massive spiked hammer in a violent impact. From up high, Commander Duncan watches the fight with anger and calls the invaders arrogant fools for talking so much. The dangerous assassin leader draws his sharp claws and decides to leap down to test Rin's skills personally. He unleashes a destructive aerial attack against the commander with the goal of crushing her in a single movement. The brutal blow is blocked by Rin in a violent collision of metal that sends sparks flying across the entire room. The cruel Horned Lord praises her speed and readies his warhammer to deliver another heavy attack. Suddenly, Andromalius grabs the head of his own advisor, Baphomet, and decapitates him without any explanation. The commander watches that brutal, nonsensical scene with a look of absolute astonishment and horror in the middle of the hall. The wicked demon lord gets covered in blood and flashes a sadistic smile, saying that things are getting fun. A gigantic and monstrous serpent with glowing eyes emerges from inside the decapitated advisor's body. The terrifying scaled beast opens its giant maw and charges against the allied forces to devour them whole. On a distant terrace, the mentor approaches Sitri and mockingly comments about the beautiful war atmosphere there. She notes that she did everything he asked but questions if the young man can truly handle Andromalius's army. The warrior holds little Seer in her lap affectionately, leaving the little girl and the mentor intrigued by that behavior. The young man summons a small blue whale toy and explains that it would be highly dangerous to take the little girl into the fight. He asks her to stay on the terrace playing with the whale, but the girl throws a tantrum saying she wants to go along with him. Suddenly, the young man interrupts the conversation with an extremely serious look upon detecting something very strange in the environment. He looks at his own hand wrapped in a red aura of energy and realizes that bizarre power should not be there. The mentor warns that Commander Rin might be in real danger and hastily departs from the location. Leaving Sitri confused, the young man leaps from the castle balcony at terrifying speed toward the battlefield to save his ally. Sitri stands shocked to lose sight of the young man in a second and wonders what the real level of his absurd power is. The aide says that this is their chance to betray him, but she tells him to shut his mouth, explaining that this is merely a test of his. The Lord orders her servants to treat little Seer with the same respect they give to her, and the subordinate obeys instantly. Citri holds little Seer in her armor, who does not let go of her new blue whale toy. The demon lord curiously asks the reason why the little girl likes a whale so much out of all things. In the middle of the battlefield, one of the allied soldiers is brutally run through by an enemy strike. Varuna watches the situation with extreme irritation and is surprised to notice an unexpected movement. The imposing Lord Andromalius swings his giant weapon and hurls the vice commander far away with full force. Varuna collides violently against the wall of the Grand Hall, leaving the soldiers around him in a panic. The terrifying horned lord laughs out loud and scoffs at the useless resistance of the allied rebel forces. Rin tries to hold back the advance of the terrifying beast and realizes that monster holds power equivalent to a lord's before the maw of the immense serpent. The commander fears that this is truly the end of her life. The young warrior closes her eyes, resigned, and mentally apologizes to her beloved lord. Suddenly, the terrifying serpent is destroyed by a powerful and mysterious dark energy right before her. Andromalius is hurled to the ground with extreme ease and asks startled who the author of that strike is. The young mentor emerges imposing in the hall and offers a final chance for the demon lord to surrender. The fallen villain breaks into a cold sweat upon sensing that absurd amount of mana emanating from the mysterious young man. He realizes startled that this intimidating presence is identical to that of the realm's legendary #1 lord. The horned lord recognizes the mentor's great power, but questions why he serves such a weak faction. The young man completely ignores the enemy's questioning and warns that he tends to talk too much in combat. In total desperation, the villain offers gold and fame should the young man decide to switch sides and support his empire. The enemy begs, promising to deliver any wish, but the mentor coldly replies that he wants the top. The villain stands in shock upon comprehending that the young man desires to reach the highest position in the entire demon realm. The mentor points his sword and coldly says that for someone weak like Andromalius, that goal would be impossible. The young man warns that he has no intention of forgiving anyone who tries to control a power they would never be capable of mastering. The fallen villain gives a mocking smile and argues that in war, any trick is valid as long as it brings victory. Before the enemy finishes speaking, the mentor delivers a fatal sword strike to end the combat for good. The young man turns to the hall and shouts with authority, announcing to everyone that the war is finally over. He orders the rival soldiers to drop their weapons to the ground, for their lord has just been defeated. The palace guards are left in absolute shock upon discovering that their powerful leader Andromalius has been defeated. Back at the camp, Citri is impressed by the speed of the victory and admits that it makes sense coming from the young man. Little Seer celebrates joyfully upon hearing her beloved teacher's voice echoing across the battlefield. Rin apologizes for having lowered her guard, but the young man warmly tells her not to be so hard on herself. The mentor thinks about the enemy's aura and concludes that this monster was far too strong for the young commander. He remains intrigued for not remembering the creature, since this type of bizarre event did not even exist in the original game. The young man warns that officially, the victory must go to Citri, and the commander guarantees she will keep everyone's secret. He instructs the vice commander to handle the cleanup of the place, and mentions he needs to go fetch little Seer at the camp. Rin asks for the location of her little lady, and the young man replies calmly that she is with Lord Citri. The warrior becomes concerned upon learning that the girl is alone with another lord, but the mentor guarantees Citri is trustworthy. Unable to contain her deep concern, Rin takes off running at high speed to find the little girl. In the command tent, Citri is still trying to process the news of that incredibly swift victory. The lord hears the total surrender report of the enemy floor and thoughtfully comments that everything ended a bit too easily. Seer senses the teacher's presence and celebrates, leaving the other lord confused for not having detected anything yet. The little girl runs happily to hug the mentor, who enters the tent carrying a massive, mysterious sack. Citri asks, surprised how he managed to return so fast, and the young man says the detailed report will come with Rin. The youth places the blood-stained sack into the hands of the allied lord, who turns completely horrified upon receiving the item. He reveals that inside lies Andromalius's head and asks the lord to take full credit for that execution, with a light smile on his face. The mentor explains simply that he is doing this merely because they are allies. The young man warns that he is already leaving with Seer and asks to split the spoils of victory in a completely fair manner. Sometime later at Seer's palace, strange hammering noises begin to echo across the entrance courtyard. The loyal butler Kane appears focused, trying to fix the large entrance door lock with a hammer. The mentor arrives carrying the little girl and asks about the damage to the lock. Leaving the elderly man quite embarrassed, Cain scratches his head awkwardly and admits laughing that he overdid it with the physical strength when dealing with some unwanted intruders. Cain praises the young man for the excellent work and congratulates him on the grand achievement of defeating the 70th floor. The mentor calmly warns that this was just the first step and that now they must prepare to move castles. The butler and the little girl stand in shock upon hearing that the teacher plans to cede the conquered castle to Lord Citri Seer, questions why he is going to give all the credit to Citri if it was the teacher himself who defeated the feared enemy. Cain argues that the castle represents the right of conquest, and the young man confirms that this transfer will be made on paper. The youth explains that at the current moment, the realm needs stable resources and finances much more than a new castle. He reveals that leaving the territory under Citri's care is the best strategy to be able to accumulate strength in silence. The little one deduces that this way the allied lord will take on all future responsibility for the region, and the young man agrees, smiling. Cain is surprised by the perfect planning and asks if the youth truly planned every detail of that negotiation. The mentor guarantees he is no fool to give anything away for free, and says that now they will focus on the internal realm and the little one's studies. While walking down the hallway, the young man reflects on the various ancient pieces of equipment they urgently need to replace. He adds that they still need to discover who was backing the rival lord and create a new circulation system. Cain asks how he had so much certainty that he would get the support of the local rebels, and the young man merely smirks. The mentor deflects the topic, saying he just had luck for remembering a specific side event from the original game. The butler does not fully believe the excuse and thinks that the young man is someone crucial whom the young lord must keep close. The young man ends the matter by kindly asking the elderly man to look after repairing the broken palace lock. He thinks that now that the immediate crisis has passed, he will be able to focus fully on teaching the little girl how to truly rule. The mentor touches Seer's forehead affectionately and reminds her that the true ruler of that place will always be her. The little one confesses all happily that she loves having lessons with her beloved teacher and says her teddy bear likes it too. The girl guarantees she will strive to learn everything, and the young man thanks her for the affection, thinking he chose the right path. A menu with delicious and varied dishes is suggested so that everyone can recover their energy in a proper manner. Cecily timidly agrees, and little Seer repeats that the maid always says that those who work hard must rest well. The little girl insists for the young man to take a nap with her and makes a cute pout when he says he is not sleepy. The young man realizes she is going to get very grumpy if he refuses and decides to put her to sleep before returning to work. He agrees to lie down for a few minutes, and the little girl celebrates joyfully upon seeing that her cute plan worked. In the bedroom, Leah greets the two, and the mentor takes the opportunity to ask her to bring a cup of warm tea for the girl. Before the maid leaves, the young man stops her for a moment and asks with considerable concern if she got hurt. Leah turns red with embarrassment at his care, but guarantees she is doing great, and the young man leaves the tea preparation to her. The maid smiles upon realizing that the mentor has already deduced the entire palace invasion and knows everyone's power level. The little one asks if something bad happened to Leah, and the teacher affectionately replies that he just wanted to make sure of everything. He wishes a good night to the girl lying with her teddy bear, and she asks in a cute way for him to sleep right there beside her. The young man thinks he should go to his own bed, but the little girl holds his sleeve firmly while making a pout. The mentor wonders if she clings to him so much for having lost her father very early or for feeling protected by his side. He decides to stay lying beside her until she falls asleep, while on another floor, the news of Andromalius's passing spreads in a distant region. The luxurious and imposing castle of Lord Dantalion stands majestic under the bright sunlight of the day. The lord of the 69th floor bites his nails tensely, thinking that Citri might be the legendary hero himself in disguise. General Leonard opines that this swift victory was only possible thanks to the military aid received from the floor below. War Minister Albus becomes concerned upon noticing that they will be the next targets, and says they need to prepare themselves very well. The ruler decides to send a letter to form a mutual defense alliance with the neighboring lord of the floor below. He remembers that the defeated rival was very strong and fears being the next one defeated should he decide to stay still without taking action. The horned leader orders them to prepare the message quickly, for the neighbor will have no reason to refuse the union. Back at Seer's castle, soft knocks are made on the door, and a voice announces that all preparations have been completed. Leah enters the room holding a tray with warm drinks and stands surprised as she looks toward the girl's bed. The maid notices with tenderness that both the mentor and the little lord have fallen fast asleep, completely drained from how exhausted they were. She watches the two sleeping side by side in a peaceful manner and silently wishes for them to have peaceful dreams. Sometime later under the moonlight, the mentor mockingly comments that his ally took a whole week to divide the assets. Citri sighs tiredly and hands over the fair division papers, saying she came running as soon as she finished all the work. She asks if she can choose the plunder first since she ceded the castle, and the young man agrees, as long as the split remains fair. The mentor warns that she must visit them every week to train and not let all the effort from before be wasted. The allied lord announces she will keep her word and asks him to stop worrying before leaving the office. Sitting in his office, the mentor thinks that post-war reorganization is urgent and begins to draft some guidelines. Suddenly, soft knocks echo on the door, and the young man calmly authorizes the entry of the mysterious visitor. Cecily emerges with a worried countenance and announces that little Lord Sear's lesson for today will have to be cancelled immediately. The maid reveals that the girl has a bit of a fever, and the young man stands up, slamming the table in a start at the news. He blames himself heavily, wondering if he demanded too much from the little girl, or if the stress of the battlefield caused that fever. The maid smiles in a gentle manner and tells him not to worry, because children her age usually get sick out of nowhere. The youth tries to calm down and sits back in his chair, reminding himself that she is just an ordinary child who gets sick. Cecily guarantees that 1 or 2 days of rest will heal her, and the mentor thanks her, asking her to take very good care of the little one. The young man places his hand on his head regretful, remembering that this world is not an electronic game, but rather real life. He decides to finish all his remaining work with considerable speed to be able to go visit the little girl as soon as possible. Later, the mentor enters the room holding a few plush toys and affectionately asks how the little one feels. The little girl opens a beautiful, radiant smile and thanks him with much joy upon receiving the new toys from her teacher. The youth excitedly reveals that he brought many other plush critters and begins to make several of them appear around the place, buried under so many cute plush toys. The girl humorously comments that the teacher went a bit overboard with the amount. While holding a penguin doll, the young man notices confused that the bedroom environment remains dark and mysterious. Sear begins to mutter in her sleep about the massive amount of toys, and the young man wonders what kind of dream she is having. He checks her temperature and notes relieved that the fever has gone down, deciding to spend the night there working by her side. Waking up suddenly, the little girl calls for the teacher, and he apologizes for having made noise when adjusting the chair. The young man caresses the little one's head, asking how she feels, and teasingly says that it was obvious he was very worried. He asks her to rest a bit more and denies her request to read the documents, warning that they will do everything together tomorrow. The mentor amusingly reminds her that if she does not heal soon, she will have to miss out on her delicious favorite pudding again. The young man lets out a light chuckle at the girl's startled reaction and gently wishes for her to have sweet dreams. The next day, Kane apologizes for interrupting the meal and delivers the inventory report of the conquered spoils. The butler asks if he is looking for something specific, and the mentor confirms, saying there is a crucial item on the 70th floor. The youth remembers that good equipment in the game greatly increased growth efficiency and that he needed to grab this one. He jots down the guidelines and proudly thinks that this secret item was something he only discovered after finishing the game several times. The young man smiles victoriously, thinking that nobody would imagine such a valuable item lay hidden in the initial floors. He hands the list over to Kane, asking to secure the secret item and send the remaining treasures to the commander. The butler analyzes the paper with attention and widens his eyes in immense surprise upon reading the exact description of the listed item. Kane asks worriedly if the item was marked correctly, and the mentor guarantees it was, and that they will go fetch it shortly. The document describes a mysterious broken sword with a shattered blade that is missing its main magical gem. In the castle storehouse, Sear stands completely enchanted with her eyes sparkling upon seeing several colorful, shiny crystals. The little girl celebrates joyfully upon seeing glinting gold bars shining intensely inside one of the large chests. The mentor approaches a specific box and quietly celebrates upon finally finding the legendary broken sword. Rin comments impressed about the enormous amount of treasures, and the young man confirms that Citri's cooperation helped a lot. Commander Rin respectfully salutes the little lord, and the girl replies stammery, completely embarrassed. The soldier shows a metallic box to the servants and announces that this is the item of maximum importance that Lord Nan highlighted. The mentor inspects the box with considerable care and praises the soldier's excellent work in delivering the correct item. The youth remembers that in the game, the sword increased growth speed 5 times over and would be highly useful at that moment. He admires the weapon's hilt, thinking about the item's immense attack power, and the little lord curiously asks what that is. The young man says it is a present for her and guarantees there is no issue with it being broken, as he knows where to find the remaining parts. The mentor warns that first they will finish checking the spoils, and the little girl asks what will happen when they fix it. With a bright and eager look, the young man replies that the sword will glow intensely, leaving the little one very excited. Rin asks if she needs to call excavators, but the young man denies it, saying that this is no ordinary weapon that gets fixed like that. While the little girl hums happily in the background, the mentor guides the commander on where each military item should be stored. Seer holds several crystals glowing enchanted, and the teacher comments in a gentle manner about how she loves shiny things. The mentor asks in a friendly way if any of the treasures caught her attention, and the little lord gets startled by the question. He gives her a head pat and says that everything there already belongs to her, so she does not need to be shy to choose a present. The girl points to a beautiful gold crown, and the young man smiles, thinking that royal blood does not lie when guiding her choice. The young man takes her to an ancient abandoned mine on the 70th floor, promising to find the parts to fix the sword walking through the mine. The young man warns that he knows the exact path and that the forks will not be a problem for them. They reach the end of the track, and the girl comments that there does not seem to be anything there, but trusts the teacher will find it fast. The mentor begins to rummage through the cavern stones in search of the exact spot where the sword part was hidden. With a glittering gleam among the rocks, the young man finally finds the red blade fragment he was looking for. Seer asks, surprised if that is already a real sword for true, and the young man replies, smiling, that this is not yet the case. The young man takes a few more firm steps toward the back of the dark mine and warns that this search has not yet ended. The young man activates his powerful magic, concentrating red energy in his hands to reveal the most important part of all. He strikes the stone wall with brutal force, provoking a massive tremor and opening a path through the rocks. The mentor comments that it still remains to cross a large gate and comes face to face with a stone creature guarding the entrance. He calls Seer close and says he will carry her in his arms because there is a small stone obstacle right in their path. Suddenly, the large gargoyle statue's eyes glow intensely, revealing that the guardian has detected the intruders. The stone creature comes to life and warns with an extremely threatening voice that they do not have permission to pass from there. The mentor explains to the little one that gargoyles are a nearly extinct race, and she comments enchanted that the statue is speaking. The monster gets irritated by the mockery, and the young man tells the creature to shut its mouth for being far too loud in the hall. With a cold and imposing look, the mentor demands that the stone guardian not disrupt the little lord's practical lesson. He summons a gigantic shark-shaped red magical creature that roars with violence, startling the gargoyle. Terrified, the guardian kneels, swearing loyalty, and the mentor thinks that a monster of this size can be useful in the future. The youth orders the servant to wait there and mentions he will return later, leaving the monster bowed in a sign of total submission. They finally reach a sacred altar with a floating red magical gem, and the little lord stands dazzled. The young man summons the broken piece of metal he found and prepares to initiate the weapon's restoration process. He positions the sword pieces over the stone altar, pointing toward the glowing magical crystal of the location. A colossal explosion of light and magical energy wraps around the entire sacred altar, leaving the little girl totally marveled. The fully restored sword floats wrapped in flames, and the girl comments with shining eyes that the weapon is very beautiful. The mentor hands over the magnificent red sword and smiling confirms that it is now the little lord's new special present. All happily, the little girl raises her new present and joyfully thanks him with an affectionate hug around her beloved teacher. The system screen reveals the absurd attributes of the powerful cursed sword, which increases the user's attributes by a lot. At the palace, Seer runs to show the present to Butler Kane, and the mentor explains that it is long past time for her to train with the sword. Kane gets startled upon noticing that the young man also brought a massive gargoyle as a present, and the mentor decides to christen the monster Arkalom. The butler comments that the creature is far too large to protect the castle and stands confused to learn that this is not its function. The mentor calmly explains that the monster is slow, but will be excellent for dealing with the presence of humans in the region. Kane thoughtfully agrees, remembering that the Guardian would be the perfect defense for the palace's important portal zone. The young man warns the monster that it will be discarded if it is useless, and the frightened gargoyle promises to give its absolute best there. The mentor interrupts the conversation to mention he needs to hear Kane's report and suggests they talk directly in his office. Once in the office, the young man asks with seriousness if Lords Dantalion and Decarabia truly made recent contact. Kane confirms and alerts that if those two floors form a large defense alliance, it will be very difficult to face them later. The mentor agrees that a direct confrontation now would be impossible, but says they cannot just watch this union happen. Kane asks if he has any plan, and the youth suggests weakening the opponent by shaking their strong network of allies and finances. The butler reminds him that this faction is famous for the strength of its merchants, who believe in commerce to evolve the floor. The young man explains that merchants depend entirely on trust and plans to destroy that relationship to make the faction crumble. Kane agrees with the logic, but ponders that this trust was built by years of commerce and will not fall in an instant. With a focused look, the mentor counters that at no point did he say he would cause that destruction in an instantaneous manner. He explains that the strengthening of Seer will take about 5 years and that they will use this time to sabotage the rival economy. The young man reveals that the plan is to become commercial competitors to them. Using the 70th floor in a discreet way, Kane quickly deduces that the young man plans to use Lord Cetri again, and the mentor replies laughing that he prefers to call it cooperation. The butler questions if the ally would accept the risk, and the young man guarantees the offer will be far too tempting to refuse. Kane asks what they intend to sell to obtain so much success, and the young man cracks a wicked smile of pure confidence. The mentor reveals in an enigmatic way that they are going to sell something valuable that simply does not exist in the entire demon realm. Meanwhile, on the periphery of the sacred nation of Soder, a few adventurers begin to comment about a new rumor at the tavern. The men say that almost no guards remain defending the demon portal and question the warrior if the story is real. The adventurer happily confirms and encourages his friend to hunt monsters to profit heavily by selling demon horns. The pink-haired girl says she knows where the sheep demons live and how easy it will be to rip their horns off. The young man decides to lead the group toward the demon realm, promising that everyone is going to make an immense fortune there. Before the portal, the adventurers notice the large crowd and confirm the rumor that the local guards vanished. Suddenly, a heavy hand grabs the blonde boy's shoulder, and a warrior asks if they can accompany them on the search. The young man turns startled and comes face to face with a massive brute with a giant axe and a nun by his side. The white-haired friend whispers for the blonde to accept, as those two are highly dangerous upper-rank adventurers. The brute cracks a satisfied smile and orders everyone to begin marching immediately toward the portal. Other explorers comment that, lately, nobody who enters the demon realm has managed to return alive. While walking, the group comments on the bizarre disappearance of the guards and agrees not to lower their guard by any means. The axe warrior theorizes about the realm's floors until he spots something suspicious and commands everyone to hide on the spot. Hidden behind a large rock, the pink-haired youth whispers warningly that there are sheep demons just ahead. The brute prepares himself excitedly to launch the hunt, but the white-haired young man interrupts him with a proposal. The youth proposes that they keep all the valuable horns, and the blonde thinks the split is unfair since they are the focus of the hunt. Suddenly, the nun places her hand on the blonde boy's shoulder in a threatening manner, saying he has a bright future. She advises with a dark look that he obey if he wants to stay alive, and the warrior activates his terrifying aura. The blonde boy irritably realizes he was tricked from the start, and that the two already planned to rob them since the tavern. He accepts the terms with reluctance, but demands that the axe brute handle all the dangerous combat alone. Before they can act, a colossal tremor begins to shake the ground with extreme violence, startling everyone present. The white-haired young man shouts, asking if everyone is okay while trying to hold himself to the ground during the earthquake. The brute complains that the monsters are going to flee with the tremor, but is interrupted by a destructive surprise attack. The giant gargoyle Arcolum emerges leaping from the heavens and warns with a terrifying voice that it has found the last invaders from there. The brute falls into absolute desperation and screams in terror upon recognizing the legendary and frightening stone creature. The white-haired youth commands everyone to run immediately and says to forget about the warrior who was cornered. He tries to pull his pink-haired friend, who is completely paralyzed with panic, and asks what is wrong with her. With her eyes wide with pure terror, the girl points forward and tremblingly stammering about the presence of guards. A troop of armored soldiers emerges surrounding the location, and one of the guards asks what Commander Rin's orders are. With an extremely cold and focused look, the blue-skinned commander decisively replies that there is only one order. She orders all the invading adventurers to be captured alive while the guards close the perimeter around them. Locked in a metal cage with his companions, the blonde boy intrigued notices that the demons are not killing the humans. The young adventurer remains completely thoughtful in the cell's darkness, trying to understand the true reason for all of that. At the palace, Rin reports that they captured more than 200 humans during the month, and the mentor with seriousness replies that it is still not enough. The commander praises the brilliant strategy of turning the realm's weakness into a perfect hunting ground for them. The young man thinks to himself that he will do anything to achieve the perfect ending and that he will have no mercy. Rin alerts that the attraction plan worked far too well and that the citizens of the upper floor are already starting to feel insecure. The mentor agrees that they cannot lose popular support and decides they need to change tactics to manage to get more humans. The young man frowns with an extremely enigmatic look and determines that the time has come to change the plan. He asks the commander if she knows specialists capable of manipulating and controlling human minds with ease. The mentor plans to make it so that the humans want to come on their own accord and uses the released blonde youth as the plan's bait. At Soder's guild, the blonde Luke punches the counter, revolted at the portal's closure, but the receptionist says those are orders. Other adventurers at the location gossip about the young man and comment that he is greedy and never settles for ordinary payments. Suddenly, the boy bursts into the guild wounded and panting, begging for help and leaving the receptionist completely startled. He desperately reveals that he managed to escape the demon realm and that all the missing people were captured alive. Luke begs for them to go save his trapped friends, and the receptionist tries to calm him down so that he can manage to explain better. The guild master emerges imposing, descending the stairs, and asks directly if the young man knows why they were kept alive. The boy tremblingly says he did not have time to find out, and the master coldly questions if he truly knows nothing. The youth asks if he is doubting a survivor, and the master admits he finds that entire story highly suspicious. He questions how a weak, low-rank adventurer managed to return alone and says his heartbeat gives him away. The master warns in an intimidating manner that his heart accelerated in the exact same way as that of all liars. He notices surprised that the cardiac rhythm calmed down out of nowhere, as if they had flipped a switch, and smells a foul scent there. The leader accuses the blonde boy of being under the demon's mind control, and the youth cracks a bizarre and frightening smile. Luke reveals his malignant smile, under the effect of mind control, and scoffs at the sharp perception of the supreme rank leader. The boy charges, delivering a swift strike, but the master evades with ease and orders to alert all guilds in the region. With the traitor defeated, the leader wipes his blade and coldly warns that from today on, nobody must go to the demon realm. The master announces the closure of Soder's portal for an indefinite period when a guard bursts into the room in a rush, screaming. The leader asks the reason for that desperation, and the messenger tries to catch his breath to deliver the new panic report. The guard anxiously reveals that the other regional guilds have already initiated a massive movement toward the rival territory. At the Northern Alliance, adventurers ignore the warnings and raise their weapons excited in search of demon horns and heads. A northern leader orders the immediate departure of the troops through the portal, scoffing at the real dangers of that enemy territory. In the sacred nation, armored knights march in celebration, declaring war against the demons in the name of their great belief. In a flashback from days before, Rin warns the mentor that the baits under mind control are ready to draw the adventurers. The young man guides to send the last group to Soder, explaining that an extremely problematic enemy to deal with lives there. The system recalls that in the original game, some humans were major hindrances, and the assassin master Adelberg was one of the worst. The mentor planned everything in a strategic manner to guarantee that Soder's powerful leader always arrives late in his actions. In the present, Varuna observes the immense horde of adventurers invading and thinks about how terrifying the mentor's plans are. Rin alerts that their role is to guarantee the total success of that strategy, capturing all the enemies who cross the portal. Varuna orders the soldiers to use mana nets for the mass capture and commands the Grand Arcalam to initiate the surprise attack. In the canyon, the explorers get startled upon realizing that the sky turned dark suddenly with a colossal shadow up high. The giant gargoyle lands in a destructive manner right in front of them, spreading panic among the invading warriors there. Arcalam declares with a terrifying voice that it will eliminate all the invaders from there. Following the direct orders of its new master, Rin commands the final attack, ordering the immediate firing of the mana nets right into the adventurers' positioning flaws. Vice Commander Varuna guides the troops to load the cannons with the powerful containment nets made of magical silk. He delivers the final order, and a gigantic magical spiderweb is fired, covering the exits and trapping the enemy forces. The adventurers try to tear the webs in desperation, but discover that the material is made of sturdy giant spider silk. An experienced paladin draws his glowing sword and cuts the containment with fury, calling the defenders filthy creatures. An allied warrior shouts relieved upon seeing the legendary crusader, Rosenbach, opening a path with powerful strikes in the middle of the fight. The supreme rank crusader shouts for everyone to stay close. While he uses his sword to open a path by force in the web, Varuna notices the heavy resistance, and Commander Rin agrees that the gargoyle alone will not manage to contain the enemy's magic. A strong, long-haired demon volunteers to resolve the problem, asking the commander to leave the fight to him. The warrior of the Ashura tribe advances in his combat form, promising that they will not be caught by surprise like in the past. The experienced crusader senses a strong enemy presence approaching at high speed and widens his eyes, startled. With a swift and brutal cut of his spear, the Ashura demon strikes down the paladin in a second, provoking despair in the troops. The horned warrior smiles rowingly, wiping blood from his face, and calls the explorers filthy vermin who clutter the place. He positions himself imposing over the defeated paladin, emanating a terrifying purple aura that terrifies everyone around. The adventurers flee in total panic while the demon mocks, saying that it is already too late to try to save their lives. He orders his guards to play a bit with the fugitives before capturing every single last one of them for the dungeons. At the palace, the mentor praises the perfect result with few damages, and Varuna replies that they merely followed his brilliant plan. The young man thanks the new commanders of the 5th Legion for the excellent service rendered in their first official mission. They thank him respectfully and bow while the mentor delegates the task of cleaning the battlefield to the two of them back in the quarters. The young man finds the little one eating pudding and affectionately asks if she waited for a long time. He caresses her head and orders Kane to prepare the leak of fake data and separate 200 high-value prisoners. The butler is surprised by the release order and questions if the plan is truly to negotiate directly with the humans. The mentor confirms the intention to collect ransom, but Kane alerts that the realm is still weak to face the human nations. The system details that the first major enemy power is the sacred nation of Felix, the only grand religious theocracy. The second threat is the Empire of Bismarck, the only realm that crowned its own emperor, centralizing all power. And finally, the Northern Alliance formed by the union of 7 powerful military fortresses that defend that border. The young man agrees that the humans are annoying, but explains that refusing the negotiation would cause them to lose their initial advantage. The little lord asks, confused, why the enemies do not just attack, and he explains that the blame for the invasion is entirely on the humans. He explains that if the humans refuse to pay the ransom for their soldiers, the emperors will lose the support and trust of the people. The mentor pets the little girl's head and teaches that for a demon lord, the maintenance of trust and the base is the most important thing. Kane comprehends the mentor's brilliant plan and promises to select the prisoners. In addition to summoning the best blacksmiths from there, Seer asks curiously what they are going to manufacture with the blacksmiths, and the mentor replies smiling that they will make something to sell. She questions if products based on humans will actually sell, and the young man guarantees they will while sending out the ransom. In the Empire of Bismarck, Emperor Claude stands surprised to receive a ransom demand letter coming from the demons. The sovereign ponders that if the rivals held the plan to devour the human realm, they merely would have declared direct war. He asks what the demanded sum is, and the minister reveals the absurd value in gold and silver charged for each group of hostages. Claude thinks the demands are far too bold, but Marquis Ebert insists that they must accept the terms for the good of the citizens. Ebert explains that the incident was provoked solely by the Adventurers Guild and that there are no reasons to punish the rivals. The Emperor questions irritably if they need justifications to attack, since they are dealing with demons from the neighboring realm. The Marquis insists that it is crucial to act with caution, as they do not possess precise data regarding the rival realm's current strength. He highlights that even powerful high-level warriors were captured without any managing to escape alive. The Emperor punches the throne in fury, feeling humiliated for having to bow before the rival realm's demands. Faced with the risk of a popular revolt, he accepts the deal, but commands to collect the maximum amount of information regarding the enemy's steps. With a look filled with hatred, Emperor Claude mentally swears that he will return that terrible humiliation in the future. Back at the palace, Kane reports that almost all nations agreed to negotiate, and the mentor celebrates the success of that bait. The young man commands to take the prisoners to the border and guides the butler on what must be said to the human emissaries. The mentor warns in a severe manner that if they do not bring the resources by the end of the week, the remainder of the hostages will be executed. In a large meeting of blacksmiths from several floors, the artisans confusedly debate over the reason why they were summoned. The group of workers falls into silence upon noticing the imposing steps of the leaders approaching the entrance platform. The artisans murmur, surprised upon seeing Lord Seer and Citri walking side by side along with the palace's mysterious mentor. Lord Citri welcomes everyone and recognizes that their curiosity regarding that sudden meeting must be immense. She gestures toward the hall, showing an enormous variety of weapons confiscated from the captured human adventurers. The blacksmiths stand dazzled upon seeing the equipment up close and consider those weapons as true works of art. The artisans spit on the ground with disgust upon discovering that humans manufactured that and say their eyes are contaminated. Citri explains that their mission is to analyze the human items in detail and recreate copies with quality identical to the original. A blacksmith revolts, thinking it insulting to imitate useless human weapons. But the mentor states that the situation is exactly that. The young man displays 2 swords and orders them to start the work already, stopping the waste of resources on weak and useless weapons. The artisan gets annoyed at the bold words, but the mentor coldly guarantees he is merely stating unquestionable facts. The young man proposes a simple test and asks those present what would happen if he collided the 2 weapons right there. He holds the 2 swords firmly, preparing himself to strike their weapon against the excellent model made by humans. The mentor raises the blades with authority and questioningly, in an intimidating manner, asks which of the 2 swords they think will break. He breaks their weapon and tells them to study human technology in order to create something far superior with their own hands. While the blacksmiths hesitate to study their rivals, the youth Doomgrim courageously volunteers to take on the grand task. Doomgrim warns that the analysis will take some time, and the young man guarantees they will have all the necessary time and resources there. The mentor suggests appointing the young blacksmith as leader of the project, and the 2 lords accept the nomination without any contestation. The young man delivers an insignia of authority to Doomgrim, allowing him to lead and give direct orders to the other artisans. An elderly goblin protests furiously, demanding a vote, but the mentor silences him on the spot with an extremely dark look. The mentor warns that true leaders assume risks and responsibilities, while the elder merely demonstrates cowardice. The frightened elder steps back, raising his hands in desperation, and tremblingly guarantees that he had no intention of offending the lords. The young man alerts that ignoring the orders of the new leader will be the same as disobeying him and the 2 lords present there. Emanating a terrifying purple aura, the mentor threatens to execute on the same spot anyone who dares to breach the commands. Touched by the trust received, the young blacksmith bows respectfully and kneels before his grand leaders. Doomgrim guarantees with all his loyalty that he will dedicate every second of his life to realize the desires of his masters. Back in the hall, Lord Citri asks for compliments on her performance, but the mentor ignores her completely to give affection to Seer. Citri complains angrily for being ignored, and the young man gives a small pat on her back, praising her participation in an ironic manner. The mentor explains that the commerce will use Citri's name and promises a generous commission over the profits of future sales. The Horned Lord suspiciously asks about the terms of the profit split and questions if the young man already has a value in mind. The young man proposes splitting half and half, and the ally complains, saying it is robbery while little Seer watches the negotiation. Citri fights angrily over them using her name, but the young man threatens to quit, and the ally quickly lowers her commission proposal. With a dark look, the young man warns that if she insists on such a low value, he will cut the supply of elite weapons. Faced with the risk and the absurd quality of the promised weapons, the Horned Lord gives up and accepts to receive a smaller share. The mentor suggests a 5% commission and guarantees that although it seems little, the final value will be gigantic. Citri remains suspicious due to them not having started sales yet, and the young man jokes, saying he is offended. She agrees to close the contract, but questions if the young man truly can recreate the human equipment models. The youth reflects that since the demon lords did not care for weapons, their metallurgy ended up becoming very outdated. The mentor ponders that the level of an army's weapons is essential, and that because of this, Citri accepted his partnership proposal. The young man delivers the final papers in a calm manner and guarantees that if she does not trust him, she is still free to leave. The allied lord screams angrily, saying she would never give up a chance to get powerful weapons for free. She stands surprised to see that the young man changed the contract rules, and he warns that the business risks will be hers alone. Citri breaks into a cold sweat upon comprehending the young man's words, and startled realizes she fell into a terrible business trap. The mentor cracks an extremely sadistic smile and reminds the frightened lord that nothing for free exists in the demon realm. In the castle dungeon, Dane and Eri talk desolate. Afraid of being executed along with the other adventurers, the white-haired youth laments that they only bring more prisoners and doubts if they will truly be spared from there. The mentor appears observing the list, and the two youths stare at him startled, sensing the young man's strong presence in the place. They tremble with panic upon realizing that the young man emanates an extremely sinister and threatening energy throughout the entire environment. An armored guard holds one of the prisoners, and the young man from the palace observes everything in a highly focused manner. The explorer screams angrily, demanding that the guards release him immediately and take those metal chains off him. The elderly Kane asks for the guards to be gentle, and the frightened Eri questions where they intend to take them now. The mentor commands the guards to halt the transport and directly asks what the names of the two young adventurers are. With an intrigued and fixed look, the dark-haired young man asks if they knew a boy named Luke in the guild. The young Dane rants furiously, saying that they were the ones responsible for capturing his friend, and the mentor goes pensive. The mentor cracks an enigmatic smile upon comprehending the situation and concludes that this was the boy active in Soder's guild. In a rush, the young man asks Kane to bring paper and ink immediately, leaving the older man quite confused with the request. The young man draws their friend's portrait on the paper and shows it to the two youths, demanding to know if they recognize him. Upon seeing Luke's drawing, the two adventurers stand completely in shock and ask startled how he knows him. The young man asks Kane if that was the boy used as bait in Soder, and the startled butler confirms that yes. The mentor celebrates the absurd luck and commands to take the two young adventurers straight to his private office. He walks through the palace, remembering that in the original game, 3 grand legendary heroes appeared when hostility rose. The young man remembers that the first and most dangerous of those opponents was precisely the hero of the sword named Luke. The mentor reflects that the assassin master Adalberk would never leave alive any human controlled by the demons. The young man smirks upon noticing that he eliminated one of the game's heroes without meaning to, when Kane enters bringing the two youths. The mentor analyzes Dane and Eri, remembering that they held excellent potential in the game and that it would be a waste to sell them. The young man faces the two prisoners in a serious manner and directly proposes that they begin serving under his orders. Kane gets startled and protests, saying it would be dangerous to accept humans of trust into Little Lord Sear's inner circle. The butler questions the motives for taking in the enemies, and the young man merely answers mysterious that he possesses his own reasons. The mentor warns the two that he will spare their lives and give them dignified treatment if they agree to work hard for him. He warns that if they refuse, they will return to the dungeons and be sold as slaves or end up dead like their friend. The young man coldly reveals that the boy Luke is dead, and the news leaves the two adventurers paralyzed with terror. Dane tries to charge with fury, blaming the mentor for his friend's fate, but the young man warns that they were not the ones who killed him. The mentor reveals that the master of Soder's guild discovered everything and took the boy's own life at the moment of his return. Eri begins to weep desperate at the tragic revelation, and the young man demands that they make a quick decision about serving him. The young Dane turns revolted at the thought of serving demons and angrily asks if the young man will truly let them live there. With her eyes watery with tears and decided to survive, the pink-haired young woman volunteers for the work. Dane infuriates, asking if she lost her mind to trust demons, and Eri replies that they need to guarantee their life. She clenches her fists, reminding her friend that the humans always treated them poorly and with contempt for not having wealth and power. The girl shouts, weeping, that she refuses to die or to become a slave in the dungeon, and that because of this, she will accept that opportunity. The mentor cracks a dark smile upon seeing the young woman kneel, agreeing to make a deal with the devil himself to live. Dane grinds his teeth with extreme frustration and hatred upon realizing that he does not possess another choice of survival for the two of them. The boy gives in and accepts the proposal, begging for the mentor to fulfill the agreement and asks what they must do in the palace. The young man turns coldly and warns that their duty now is to train hard, since at their current level, they are totally useless. He gives the deadline of 3 years to prove their value and mockingly warns that without results, they will have no future. The teacher announces that today's class will be fencing, and little Sear celebrates, saying she loves training with the sword. Through inherited memories, the mentor knows she is skilled with the blade and decides to teach her the combat basics. He warns her that she needs to hold the weapon with both hands, but the girl hesitates to let go of her teddy bear. The young man remembers that the toy is a keepsake from her father and knows that parting with the bear for a while will be a challenge. The mentor explains that she only needs to separate from the teddy bear during class and is happy to see that she trusts him. The cute little girl affectionately asks the toy to wait right there in the corner, promising to return to it very quickly. The young man holds the girl's hands to adjust her posture and teaches her the proper way to grip the hilt of the sword. The youth demonstrates the combat stance, and Seer mimics the pose perfectly, asking if she is doing it the right way. He is shocked to see the flawless posture of the girl, which reveals this to be her first fencing lesson in her entire life. The mentor announces that they will focus only on basic slashing strikes and asks her to pay very close attention. The young man executes a swift and extremely powerful movement with the wooden sword, generating a massive gust of wind. The little girl is completely amazed by the demonstration, and the teacher encourages her to try doing the same. Seer takes a firm step forward and raises her heavy red sword with both hands, preparing to strike. A red energy and a sinister silhouette arise behind the little one as she concentrates all of her immense power. The girl delivers a devastating blow that creates a gigantic shockwave, destroying the floor of the training hall. The teacher stands completely frozen in panic and awe upon witnessing the overwhelming strength of that attack. The youth realizes that the magic sword is granting an absurd status bonus, vastly different from how it was in the game. The little one asks all cutely if she made the right move, and the mentor hides his amazement, praising her great performance. Facing the immense fissure opened in the floor, the young man ends today's class and decides they will only use wooden swords. Suddenly, the little lord remembers something important and begins to speak in a mysterious and serious tone of voice. With a wicked aura, she reveals that some humans have breached the castle and asks what is going on there. The young man tries to justify it by saying that the humans study on their own, guaranteeing that she is his only disciple. She accuses him of fibbing because he also teaches Lord Citri, but the mentor explains that it is strictly for business. The girl looks deep into his eyes and asks if he will always be her teacher and no one else's. With an awkward smile, the young man immediately confirms that she is and always will be his only beloved student. Seer celebrates joyfully, while a white-haired ally sneaks up quietly, calling out to the young man. The ally whispers a major secret into the young man's ear, revealing that the little lord's birthday is coming up. Facing this unexpected revelation, the youth lets out a worried sigh, realizing he has run into a major problem. The horned lord complains about him bringing up the matter now, and the young man questions when the right time for that would be. She asks the young man to open up to his older sister, and he agrees to tell her as long as she does not keep teasing him. The young man says it is about Seer, and the allied lord secretly hopes they had a falling out so she can hire him. The lord is surprised to see that the drama was merely about gifts, and the young man notices her clear expression of disappointment. She brushes it off with an awkward laugh, but the mentor tells her to forget the wild ideas of trying to recruit him. The ally suggests giving sweets or dolls as a gift, but the young man thinks these options are far too simple for the occasion. The lord scoffs, saying he wants to look cute, and the youth remembers he needs to increase her affection for the good ending. The ally suggests giving something shiny, remembering the crown, and the young man recalls that the object was way too big for her head. She suggests adjusting the size, and the youth decides to have a blacksmith rework the piece of jewelry, praising the ally's good idea. Paying no mind to the allies shouting, the young man plans to break into Seer's room in secret to take the crown back. Treading lightly down the dark hallway, the young man asks the maid if the little one really went out to have a snack. The fox-eared servant confirms that the chef is serving pudding and that the surprise operation is going smoothly. With all the care in the world, the young man places his hand on the doorknob and begins to open the little girl's bedroom door. To everyone's despair, the girl comes running down the hallway, shouting for the teacher and ruining the secret plan. She hugs him, saying she felt his mana, and the young man realizes with relief that he almost ruined the entire gift surprise. The little one asks what he was doing there, and the youth lies quickly, saying it is a beautiful night to go for a stroll. The young man says they are going for a walk and signals for the maid to enter the bedroom while they are out. Gazing up at the gorgeous starry sky, the cute little girl comments with sparkling eyes about how beautiful the full moon is sitting on the bench. The teacher pats her head and feels glad that he sent the shiny crown to be resized for her with a very gentle look. He asks her to always take care of herself and warns her that she does not need to push past her limit. The girl shyly confesses that she likes him and his classes very much, and that is why none of it feels hard or tiring. The young man cracks a beautiful smile and agrees to teach her more, reminding her that resting is just as important as training. Seer happily agrees to the stroll, and the mentor wishes from the bottom of his heart that she never loses this innocence. The maid announces that the mission was a success, and the teacher calls the little girl to head back inside the castle. The mentor goes to the 70th floor and greets Doomgrim, asking to what he owes the pleasure of the visit. He explains that he wants to commission a piece for Seer using the same design as the crown, but in a smaller size. Doomgrim knows the perfect blacksmith, and the young man requests that everything be ready in 1 week, keeping it an absolute secret. The blacksmith shares that the research is progressing, but the prototypes are not yet ready for display. The mentor tells him not to rush, and the blacksmith expresses his gratitude, promising to ensure the project's success. Satisfied to have the gift taken care of, the young man walks away thinking about the preparations when he hears loud crying. The mentor runs over in a fright and finds the maids trying to calm the little lord, who is weeping desperately. The servant tries to offer a delicious pudding to distract her, but the little girl screams. Rejecting the sweet in a fury, everyone is left in absolute shock upon realizing that the girl rejected even her beloved and precious pudding. Crying heavily, the little girl looks to the side and finally notices the presence of her dear teacher there. She runs toward the young man in tears and throws herself forcefully into his arms to get a tight hug. The youth comforts her, saying he is right there, and gently asks the reason for so much weeping and despair. The servants explain that she thought the mentor had left for good, and the young man understands the situation. He smiles and apologizes for leaving without warning, suggesting that everyone head back inside the quarters now. The mentor holds her in his lap on the throne and asks what scared her so much, admitting it was careless on his part. The little one confesses with tears in her eyes that she was afraid he would leave, and the young man tells her not to worry. He promises that he will look after her and guide her until she grows up strong and reaches the pinnacle of the entire kingdom. Seer asks with an anxious look if the teacher will abandon her when she finally reaches that pinnacle. The youth remembers that he needs to finish the story to return to his own world, but he knows he cannot reveal this to her. He reassures her that he will never leave her and will always be by her side, leaving the little girl a bit more relieved. The young man suggests eating pudding to celebrate, but the little girl internally realizes that this was his first lie. While being carried, the girl thinks that the mentor will leave upon achieving his goal and decides she cannot allow that dark thoughts arise in the mind of the girl, who wants her dear teacher to stay by her side forever. With a chilling gaze and a fixed expression, she vows to herself that she will do whatever it takes to never let him leave. A week passes, and the day of the little lord's birthday finally arrives with the official announcement of her entrance. The little girl enters the hall beautifully dressed and holding hands with the mentor, receiving congratulations from everyone present. Seer thanks everyone sweetly, and the soldiers whisper among themselves about how incredibly cute the little lord looks. The vice commander approaches with a friendly smile and hands over the beautiful gift that he and Rin prepared with care. The little girl is amazed, joyfully thanking them for the lovely present, and the young man says it is an honor for them. Lord Citri makes a joke, calling the gift modest, and the mentor asks if everyone can expect something better coming from her. She confidently accepts the challenge and claps her hands, ordering them to immediately bring out the gift she prepared. The mentor places his hand on his forehead, confused to see the bizarre gift, while the little girl watches, completely puzzled. Citri displays a giant golden statue of Seer, stating that a lord needs to show her grandeur and power. The young man admits she is not entirely wrong, and the ally asks irritably if that was supposed to be a compliment from him. To the mentor's surprise, the little lord loves the golden statue and gives a thumbs up, thanking the ally. When it is his turn to deliver the gift, the young man smirks and orders Doomgrim to bring out the secret commission. The blacksmith hands over the wooden box, and the young man passes the gift to Seer, who tosses her teddy bear for Kane to hold. The elderly Kane and the guests are left in complete shock as they catch the plush toy thrown so suddenly. With her eyes sparkling with anticipation, the girl asks if she can open the gift now, and the mentor allows it with a smile. Upon opening the box, a bright and gleaming golden light illuminates the little girl's face, and she lets out a cry of immense joy. The beautiful golden crown with sparkling red stones fits absolutely perfectly on Seer's head. The mentor wishes her a happy birthday, and she thanks him with a radiant smile in the middle of a beautiful flowery setting. He picks her up in his arms again, asking if she liked the gift that much, and the little girl responds, shouting, yes. He notices that her hair is turning white from training, which means her mana flow is stabilizing. The young man notices something unusual and asks the little one to stay very still while he gently touches her head. Pulling back a strand of hair, his eyes widen in surprise as he notices that a small horn is starting to grow on the girl. Frantic, the young man shouts, pointing out the horns, but Kane calms him down, explaining that this is perfectly normal for them. Kane wonders about the mentor's origins, while the young man feels relieved to see that the little girl is not feeling any pain. Seer reassures him that she is not feeling any pain at all, and Nan is relieved as he hugs the little girl. Kane warns that her new horns are sensitive, and Nain realizes that he truly needs to be very careful. The young man asks about the new weapon prototypes, and the blacksmith reveals that everything is already properly prepared. The blacksmith becomes worried about potential failures in the tests, but the mentor reassures him that there is no problem with failing. He explains to Seer that failures bring useful experience to achieve even better results in the future. The young man asks for no one to be nervous, and the blacksmith respectfully agrees with the master's words. The mentor analyzes the new sword up close and comments that it at least looks very nice on the outside. He affectionately asks Seer to take a few steps back because testing the weapon could be dangerous. Everyone steps back and watches in silence as the youth positions himself before the table to test the blade. With a swift and precise movement, the young man wields the sword and delivers an extremely powerful vertical strike. Doomgrim gulps, watching the attack with great tension, not knowing if his creation will withstand the impact. The young man sees that the blade held up perfectly and congratulates the blacksmith on the excellent work done. The blacksmiths celebrate the successful test, and the mentor plans the final adjustment so they can launch the product. He places his trust in the blacksmiths for the next pieces of equipment, and the goblin promises to give his best. Little Seer excitedly asks if they are going to start the main plan, and the mentor confirms with a smile. Some rumors begin to spread through the kingdom about the sale of powerful weapons on the same tier as human ones. On the 69th floor, Duke Wayne comments on the rare weapons, and his ally thinks it is just idle gossip. The ally doubts the quality of the Demon Kingdom's weapons, but the Duke prefers not to ignore the rumors. The Duke decides that he will personally check the situation to verify whether the rumors are real or not. The companion decides to go along on the trip, thinking of the possibility of making a good business investment. They arrive at the destination, and Duke Wayne is quite surprised to see where the meeting is going to take place. The ally is shocked to notice that they are at the Demon Lord's castle, and Wayne confirms that it is a business of his. The mentor welcomes the guests who showed up at the castle. Motivated solely by the strong rumors, the nobles begin to whisper in surprise upon seeing that Lord Seer is also part of this massive business venture. The atmosphere in the hall grows tense with the realization that this business meeting could change the course of things. Lord Citri guarantees on her own reputation that the new weapons possess human-grade quality. The Duke's ally is surprised to see the Lord's immense confidence in putting her own name on the line for the business. The mentor warns that anyone who does not have a real interest in negotiating can leave the hall immediately. With an intimidating glare, the Lord threatens, saying that anyone who hears the secrets and does not close a deal will not make it out. One of the guests asks if that is a direct threat, but she fires back, saying it is simply a fair warning. While some nobles decide to leave, Duke Bennett resolves to take the risk and remain in the room. The ally wishes good luck to Duke Bennett, who sees this as a golden opportunity to forge new alliances. Shortly after, only 20 guests remain in the hall, and the mentor announces that the real show is about to begin. The young man introduces himself as Seer's mentor and reveals himself to be the true mastermind behind that entire plan. The guest is shocked to realize that the young man uses the Demon Lord herself merely as a storefront for the business. The mentor proposes exclusive trade of weapons for 3 years with a 60% profit split. The young man explains the terms of the agreement, while the guest tries to understand how they decided on this split. The Lord quietly grumbles about her small commission, while the guest accepts the established terms. The nobles realize that even by keeping the smaller share, they will still make a gigantic profit from these rare weapons. The young man presents 2 swords for comparison, challenging those present to test the quality of both. Upon analyzing the weapon up close, the Duke is amazed by the top-tier craftsmanship of the equipment. He realizes that Duke Wayne made a massive mistake by leaving and losing the chance to monopolize this. The guest questions the monthly production quantity and finds the number a bit low for his business. With a clever smile, the young man clarifies that they are not just producing ordinary swords for trade. The Duke deduces in surprise that they will also make armor and helmets when the mentor suddenly snaps his fingers. He confirms that the trade will encompass nearly all types of equipment, leaving everyone in shock. The mentor lists the new products, and the Duke agrees that this is more than enough to turn a massive profit. The Lord regrets not asking for a larger share, but knows she would have been left out if she had hesitated any longer. While the Lord reflects on the deal, Duke Bennett eagerly asks what his second proposal would be. The mentor addresses a specific guest, asking his name since he had not taken his eyes off him. The young man recognizes Bennett and remembers that in the game, he led a massive merchant guild, making him ideal for his plans. Bennett smiles, realizing that the products are extremely valuable precisely because they have such a limited supply on the market. The mentor agrees with a smile on his face, warning that some clients will fight tooth and nail to get their hands on the weapons. The young man announces that he will step out for a moment to fetch the second proposal, leaving Seer and Bennett waiting for him. He walks down to the dark dungeon of the castle to retrieve the next big business venture, which he personally captured on the lower floor. Desperate cries echo through the cells as the young man approaches, accompanied by his strong royal guards. Bennett is completely shocked to see human prisoners and questions in surprise if the young man is suggesting forced labor trafficking. The young man praises his quick wit and explains that he has already separated the useful captives, but does not guarantee a constant supply in the future. The mentor makes it clear that this is a very dangerous job and gives the option for anyone who wants to leave on friendly terms. The Duke reflects that humans are difficult to control and that most demons dislike them out of pure moral principle. He knows that nobles love these things and accepts the deal, while some other frightened merchants resolve to decline. The young man notices that only 5 of them remain and decides to continue explaining the inner workings of that dark trade. He points to a cell full of exhausted prisoners and explains that this first group is meant for heavy labor. The youth introduces the next cell, containing people of fine appearance destined for the entertainment of the Demon Kingdom's nobility. The young man shows the strong warriors held in chains, guaranteeing that they are just as powerful as human knights. Bennett grows excited by the strength of the captives, but a prisoner shouts in anger upon realizing he will become a servant to demons. The warrior refuses to accept that grim fate and shouts, furiously demanding that they put an end to him once and for all. The merchant worries about them being too rebellious, but the young man merely smirks, guaranteeing that there will be no issues. The mentor whispers some mysterious words, activating a terrifying spell directly from his hidden grimoire of magic. The prisoner begins to glow and screams in panic as he feels a magical brand burning intensely on his own neck. He curses the demons with all his might as the dreadful magical brand spreads across his entire body. The warrior tries to swear vengeance, but the magical seal activates violently, causing him to collapse completely helpless onto the floor. The young man explains that he placed a trigger curse on the necks of all of them to guarantee blind obedience at any cost. He reveals that even mental conditioning is part of the service provided, leaving the merchants frightened by his power. Days later, Wayne asks indignantly where Bennett acquired such valuable merchandise, and he reveals his pact with the upper floor. The buyer analyzes the sword in Bennett's shop and admits in surprise that the quality is infinitely superior to what he expected. The man offers to pay double, but Bennett declines, saying he has exclusive rights secured by the 3-year contract. The rival envies the monopoly, while Bennett warns with a smile that the market is about to undergo a massive revolution. Bennett asks his assistant if everything is in order and commands him to spread rumors about a grand auction through the upper floors. He knows that wealthy and influential people from high society are always desperate for new luxury toys. Nain's assistant delivers a letter from Bennett inviting him to the auction, and the young man finds the idea very interesting. The butler comments that Bennett was very clever to send the invitation, but the young man thinks going just to watch would be quite boring. With a mischievous smile on his face, the mentor plans to take 2 specific people along with him to watch the grand auction. Seer is enchanted upon entering Bennett's gigantic shop. Amazed by the large quantity of shiny items, the young man guarantees there are better things inside, while the 2 human servants wonder about the reason they were brought there. Bennett greets the little lord respectfully, and the young man asks to see the magical artifacts available in the luxurious shop. The group begins to head up the establishment's stairs, and the human servants timidly catch the attention of their new master. The merchant notices the human servants and asks about them, but the young man quickly tells him to mind his own business. Bennett opens the doors to the special vault, revealing a hall filled with rare and extremely valuable magical items. The 2 human youths are completely starstruck to see so many legendary-grade magical artifacts right before them. The mentor says they can choose one item to help with their studies, and they can hardly believe his generosity. The young pink-haired girl approaches a display case and shyly asks if she can have a beautiful, shiny ring. The mentor explains that the ring stores mana and is safe for humans, while Seer observes everything with a very serious look. The little lord casts an incredibly cold glance at the pink-haired girl, leaving her frightened without understanding why the young man notices the atmosphere and asks if Seer also wants to pick a gift, and she immediately celebrates joyfully. The little girl holds a beautiful, gleaming blue pendant, saying she wants that one because it is the most radiant object in the entire room. The young man analyzes the necklace and is very pleased to see that the object possesses a powerful protection spell against dangers. The youth announces that the payment will be charged to the lower floor and asks Bennett to set aside suitable items for the 2 captives. The mentor asks about the remaining time, and Bennett warns that if they set out now, they will arrive right on schedule for the auction. The young man calls the two young servants to come along, and they realize with relief that the master truly cares about them. The auctioneer enthusiastically announces the next item, perfect for clients to enjoy the summer season. He introduces the human captives, guaranteeing they will never rebel, and starts the bidding at 5 gold coins. The two human servants grow apprehensive, realizing that terrifying demonstration was a direct warning for them. The mentor silently admires Bennett's intelligence in using an auction to profit much more from the sales. The pink-haired girl asks her teacher the reason they do not sell those servants who seem very valuable. The mentor explains to Seer that he also needs allies by his side, just as she has her own loyal servants. He says there are things that only humans can do, and the little lord opens a beautiful smile, trusting him completely. The young man asks the two young humans directly if they regret accepting his partnership offer. The two hesitate for an instant with mixed feelings, facing the unexpected question from their powerful protector. Upon seeing another captive being sold, the two youths realize with great relief that cruel fate could have been theirs. They admit that allying with the young man was the best choice of their lives, and the mentor guarantees he will count on their help. Years pass in the blink of an eye, while little Seer trains hard to control her immense flow of magic. The teacher praises the young lord's development upon noticing how excellent she has become at gathering and controlling her own mana. 5 years pass, and the young Seer appears much taller and beautiful, joyfully greeting her beloved teacher. The young man praises her effort and suggests changing the location of today's class, leaving the girl very curious about the surprise. The mentor warns that the class is of utmost importance, but the girl pouts, complaining that he should take care of it alone. The teacher admonishes that she cannot be lazy just because she finds the task boring, and she accepts the advice with her head bowed, walking through the garden. The young man asks if she knows what day it is today, and explains that the exclusive weapon contract has finally ended. The young woman comments that they tried to renegotiate the deal, but ponders that they are under no obligation to accept the terms. She explains that they now possess enough distribution channels, and that many other merchants are dissatisfied with the situation. She says that if they give hope of trade to the other merchants, they will bring much better offers, making the mentor proud. The young man praises her excellent judgment, agreeing that maintaining the monopoly now would be a terrible business strategy. The young lord comments with wide eyes that she also heard rumors about the major turmoil occurring in the human kingdom. The Great Northern War has begun between the Alliance and the Empire, giving players the chance to focus on their own factions. This great war was the ideal opportunity for the young man to strengthen his faction in the chaos of that military confrontation. The mentor says that this is not even the biggest reason, and asks if she still remembers when he first revealed the plan. She remembers perfectly that the mentor's grand objective was to completely destroy Lord Dantalion's commercial credit. With a very confident smile, the young man asserts that the time has finally come for them to act with full force on the mission. Gathering with the business partners, the young man announces that he will not renew the exclusive sales contract, and everyone accepts the term. He smirks and warns that in exchange for the non-renewal, he would like to present a new and very lucrative business proposal. The young man presents a mysterious paper to the business partners, who begin to whisper, completely surprised, in the hall. He explains that he only needs them to spread some rumors, and in exchange, he will provide more captives, leaving Bennett very tense. Bennett questions if the information is real, and the young man fires back with an intimidating look, asking if he doubts his word. Bennett knows that spreading this will make them enemies of Dantalion, but breaking the partnership with the young man would be an even bigger mistake. Seer questions the pressure on them, and the young man explains that after such a successful partnership, the time has come for them to take risks. Realizing they depend on the profits with the young man to survive, Bennett and the others finally agree to be part of the plan. The young man says goodbye, trusting in their work, while a mysterious ally with crossed legs questions if the rumors are real. She warns that Dantalion is extremely careful in business, and complains that the young man should have warned her about this sooner. The Lord gets annoyed and begins to justify herself, explaining the real reason she has not visited the lower floor lately. She confesses she is terrified of Seer, and finally gives in, agreeing to visit the castle more frequently to help the young man with a clever smile. The young man tells her to act normally, guaranteeing that the rest of the plan will work itself out over time. The scene shifts to the 69th floor, revealing the imposing castle of the demon lord who commands that region of the kingdom. The demon lord angrily crumples a newspaper that carries very grave allegations of fraud in his large and lucrative weapon trade. Completely beside himself, he throws the reports into the air, demanding to know who the rascal was that uncovered that hidden secret. Dantalion's weapon trade was his financial pillar, but it suffered a harsh blow from the flawless items coming from the upper floor. With warehouses full of unsold weapons, he doctored the accounts to pretend everything was sold so as not to lose clients. Desperate, the Lord realizes he will now look like a thief in the eyes of the clients and tries to find the source of the terrible leak. The servants promise to find the culprit quickly, but warn that there is another much more urgent problem to be resolved. The assistant reveals that the large weapon forges are aggressively demanding the payment of the massive accumulated debts. The Lord falls into despair and holds his head tightly, not knowing where he will get the money to pay off that gigantic debt. The advisors suggest calming the merchants and selling off the entire stock to get quick cash to pay the debts. They warn that losing the stock is better than going completely bankrupt and alert that without money, Lord Citri will attack them. Soon Dantalion resolves to contact Decarabia to ask for a loan, preferring to ally with those above than to be destroyed. The young man reads the report, satisfied to see Dantalion falling into his trap and struggling desperately to survive. The scene shows Nain's luxurious office filled with books, where he and the young lord converse quietly about the plan. The mentor explains that Decarabia will squeeze every coin out of Dantalion, while the latter will do everything not to lose his support. Seer asks how he discovered Dantalion's hidden stock, and the young man reveals that he obtained the information thanks to the servant Dane. He praises the usefulness of humans and asks if she does not trust him, but the little girl reacts in a very cute and jealous manner. Seer blushes with embarrassment and pouts, complaining that the teacher has been giving too much attention to the other servants lately. The young man finds this childish side of her amusing and affectionately guarantees that he will always be her one and only teacher. The girl shyly asks if that is true, and the young man pats her head, confirming it with absolute certainty. He plans to accelerate the ruin of their alliance, and Seer agrees that that information is perfect for causing a major rift. The young man agrees and affectionately asks the young lord to call Commander Rin to carry out a very important mission. In the throne room of the 72nd floor, the loyal Commander Rin kneels respectfully before his leaders. The young man explains that Dantalion asked for help and that a delegation is on the way, warning that this meeting would be bad for them. The mentor hands a special sword to Rin and orders him to eliminate that delegation without leaving any kind of trace. The warrior analyzes the blade and realizes it is a top-quality weapon forged on Dantalion's 69th floor. The warrior understands the strategy instantly and realizes that this is yet another of the young mentor's incredibly brilliant plans. Rin accepts the mission with pride, vowing to fulfill the objective in the name of his sovereign, who behaves like a true leader. Seer excitedly asks if she performed well as a demon lord and asks, hopping around, for a special reward from her teacher. Thinking about the prize, the young man asks with a smile what kind of doll or teddy bear she would like to win this time. To the young man's surprise, the girl's expression changes, and she warns with a very serious look that the prize will not be a doll. She stomps off in a huff, leaving the young man very confused, wondering if she has entered the rebellious phase of youth. At the connection portal, Rin instructs his soldiers, warning that their identity cannot be exposed under any circumstances. He divides the targets of the 15-person delegation. While a soldier worries about the presence of the Pentagram Knights, Rin grips the hilt of his sword and admits that the situation would be quite complicated if the elite warriors were to show up. He guarantees he will handle them in a way that looks like the work of another faction and commands everyone to take their positions. Heavy blasts of wind and dust occur in the canyon, indicating the start of the violent combat against the enemies. A bit later at the connection location, the grand purple magic portal begins to glow intensely in the middle of the woods. The enemies cross the portal without the elite knights, easing the work for Rin, who launches the ambush on the spot. Rin advances with frightening speed, delivering fatal strikes that defeat the opponents in the blink of an eye in the valley. With a firm shout of command, the leader orders his soldiers to attack with everything to eliminate the remaining enemies. Caught by surprise, the opponents fall into complete panic, not understanding where that swift and devastating attack came from. With everyone defeated, Rin leaves the fake sword planted in the ground to frame the rival and orders an immediate return to the castle. On the 69th floor, Dantalion falls into complete panic upon discovering that the entire allied delegation was assassinated in the woods. The assistant confirms the tragedy and suggests they notify Lord Decarabia as quickly as possible about the occurrence. Dantalion refuses to notify him because one of his own swords was found at the scene, making them the prime suspects. The advisor warns that Decarabia will use this to pressure them and collect tributes, suggesting paying a large compensation instead. Furious, the Lord accuses Citri of setting up that ambush and orders a letter to be sent to Decarabia, preparing for war. Suddenly, a frantic guard comes running into the hall, interrupting the meeting with extremely urgent news. The guard reveals that Decarabia's army has crossed the portal, and the Lord realizes the rival plans to turn him into a vassal. The advisors suspect the perfect timing and suggest that Decarabia himself staged the massacre to invade the territory. Dantalion becomes completely enraged and orders the mobilization of his entire army to halt the rival's invasion at any cost. At the Little Lord's castle, the messenger confirms that the invasion has begun exactly as the young mentor had predicted before. The young man asks for permission to handle the case and celebrates, saying that this is the perfect chance to profit without any effort. Seer asks the meaning of the term, and the teacher explains that it means gaining a major advantage from the rival's fight. Nain orders Commander Epsilon to prepare the troops, but the lizard leader alerts that the enemy army is far too powerful. The mentor explains that they will not fight head-on, but merely draw the enemy's attention, leaving the commander very enthusiastic. Seer wishes good luck in a very cute way, and the loyal lizard commander guarantees he will fulfill the mission with total success in the valley. The young man orders Rin to withdraw the merchants from the 69th floor, but the ally questions if they will obey the order. The young man explains that the merchants were heading there for safety, but were deceived by Dantalion before the start of the invasion. He sees this as the perfect chance to destroy trust in them and draw them in by offering great advantages on the upper floor. Seer asks if they will need Lord Citri's approval, but the young man guarantees he will accept just to make easy money. The little girl celebrates, predicting the inevitable downfall of Dantalion, and orders the young man to take the lead of the secret operation. The girl feigns a cough, catching the attention of the mentor, who asks, confused, if she did not understand some part of the explanation. She says she just had an excellent plan idea, leaving the young man curious to hear what is going on in her mind. She suggests taking down Dantalion's floor while the troops clash, but the young man thinks the idea is far too risky. Seer insists, saying she trained a lot and learned powerful spells directly from him so she could fight in the war. The mentor firmly declines, warning that it is not yet the time for her to go to battle until she gets a bit older. She complains very angrily, questioning how much more she will have to grow since she feels mature and strong enough for that. The young man mentally acknowledges that no lord there would beat Seer, but he still worries about the girl's safety. He remembers that she is still just a child and fears seeing her get gravely injured or perish in the middle of that combat. He knows that if something happens to her, all his efforts to secure a happy ending would go down the drain. He affectionately asks her to hold on a bit longer and apologizes for acting so selfishly regarding her protection. In return, he promises to grant a wish of hers at the end, as long as it is not going into combat, leaving the girl thoughtful. With sparkling eyes, the girl happily reveals that her only wish is to travel together with him to anywhere in the world. The young man realizes they have never gone out for a stroll and accepts the request. Touched by the childish and cute excitement of the little lord in her room, Seer hugs her plush animals, celebrating the future trip, very anxious and unable to sleep from joy. She hugs her bear, smiling as she thinks that her beloved teacher is the most precious person and will always be by her side. To be able to stroll with him as soon as possible, she decides she needs to make that war end quickly at any cost. With a determined look, she resolves to act, even if she has to disobey the teacher and be considered a rebellious girl. She seeks out Commander Rin and demands to go along to the battlefield, leaving the warrior totally shocked by the order. She asserts she is the true leader, and Rin recalls that she masters incredible fencing and magic techniques taught by the mentor. He knows she would be of great help, but respectfully declines the request, saying that mission is exclusive to his troops. Rin says the mentor has his reasons, and Seer points her finger, asking in an intimidating manner which leader he truly serves. The commander asserts that his only lord is her, leading the young woman to grandly conclude that her orders come first. Faced with the argument, Rin gives in, agreeing to her orders, and Seer celebrates very happily, confirming she will go along on the mission. Rin asks her not to push herself too hard in combat, and the little girl guarantees with plenty of joy that she knows very well how to take care of herself. The warrior insists, reminding her of the promise to stay safe, and Seer responds, laughing, that she already understood the message very well. Walking with her sword, the young woman mentally asks the teacher to wait, because she's going to finish that entire war shortly. On the castle walls, Dantalion's forces position themselves, and the commander shouts, ordering everyone to defend the front line. With a firm command to attack, dozens of archers begin to loose their arrows from the top of the immense stone ramparts. A literal rain of arrows strikes the enemy soldiers, who fall gravely wounded in the middle of the rocky battlefield. On the invaders' side, a floating magical artifact of a brilliant pink color begins to charge an immense amount of energy under orders to attack. The cannon fires gigantic beams of pink energy toward the defenses of Dantalion's castle. Loud explosions caused by the magical impact destroy the defensive lines, injuring dozens of soldiers who scream in pain. Large blocks of stone and debris from the ramparts begin to collapse from the heights due to the tremendous impact of the attacks. One of our soldiers begins to tremble in terror. Upon noticing the debris crashing down directly over his head, a gigantic stone crushes the warrior violently, leaving the survivors frightened by the brutality of that siege. Protected by large shields, the warriors complain that the magical shots are constant, preventing any approach. With no other alternative, the commander shouts, ordering the immediate retreat of all troops to avoid greater losses at the site. Suddenly, a powerful knight wearing golden armor and wielding a colossal sword appears on the battlefield. The cannons continue firing magical projectiles, but the golden warrior observes everything with a very cold and focused look, with a swift and precise movement. The golden knight parries and destroys the enemy cannon shot with his colossal sword. Raising his massive weapon, the leader delivers a firm speech, ordering that no soldier feel fear in the face of enemy forces. He introduces himself grandly as Balthazar, the first star of Decarabia, ready to lead the strike force. Frightened to see the elite warrior on the field, the soldiers retreat, but Dantalion furiously orders them to keep firing. Seeing that his soldiers are cowards, Dantalion gets annoyed and raises his hands, gathering mana to conjure a spell of his own. A gigantic runic circle of green color appears in the air as the Lord invokes the destructive and dark flames of the underworld. The spell is completed, and a gigantic wave of green fire engulfs the battlefield with the goal of burning the enemies. The Golden Knight stands in absolute shock upon seeing the overwhelming force of the green fire coming his way. The soldiers scream desperately upon seeing their powerful commander be completely swallowed by the green flames. Dantalion's servants praise him for the magic, but he tells them to stop staring and prepare for the next attack. Believing that the enemy leader passed away, Dantalion's soldiers launch a violent charge against the invaders. Dantalion smiles confidently, believing that without the star of the pentagram, they will easily defend the fortress. Suddenly, a massive energy emerges from within the flames, revealing that the tide of battle has not yet turned for them. One of our warriors is brutally impaled by a giant weapon that comes flying through the middle of the smoke. The soldier falls lifeless to the ground, while the mysterious attacker lands in an extremely imposing manner at the site. The golden armored feet walk slowly, leaving the fortress defenders completely desperate. Balthazar resurfaces without a scratch, commenting mockingly that the Lord's fire magic was merely lukewarm. The warrior grips the defenses with his hands, calling Lord Dantalion pathetic because of his weak attack. In front of the ramparts, he ridicules the rivals, asking if they truly thought they could go toe-to-toe with Decarabia. Dantalion shouts furiously, calling the enemy a filthy worm and saying he only survived because of his armor. The Golden Knight tells him to blame his own weakness for failing to pierce the gift he received from his leader. Seer decides she has seen enough of that useless argument and prepares to intervene directly in the confrontation. A devastating gust of wind falls from the sky like lightning. Striking the powerful Golden Knight with full force, Balthazar uses his quick reflexes to dodge the destructive attack at the last second, being thrown backward. The warrior kneels in affright upon seeing who attacked him, while a gentle voice laments that he managed to dodge. Balthazar recognizes her in alarm as the terrifying Lord Seer, and the girl confirms her identity with a joyful smile. Dantalion observes her from afar, suspecting she wants some highly valuable reward in exchange for that unexpected help. She asks if he is the famous Balthazar, and the Golden Warrior questions what brings the great lord of the lower floor there. She says he is disrupting her business, and the knight mocks her young age, saying she does not know her place. The warrior raises his colossal weapon, thinking of the glory of defeating the girl and how proud his sovereign will be. Suddenly, the girl's hair begins to glow with a chilling red aura, revealing the activation of a great power. With an extremely cold look, she merely points her index finger at the opponent and whispers the word of activation. A massive skull of flames suddenly appears, exploding around Balthazar, who stands completely frozen in terror. The Golden Knight begins to break into a cold sweat from nervousness upon realizing she conjured a powerful spell without using any chant. He notices in despair that his legendary armor is melting with the approach of the flames due to the extreme heat of the blow. He cuts through the flames with a strike, guaranteeing that the fire will not defeat him, but admits the little girl possesses good fighting tricks. In the blink of an eye, Seer appears floating right in front of his face, leaving the warrior completely without reaction time. The powerful Golden Knight falls defeated to the ground, and Seer sheathes her weapon, commenting with disdain that the fight was very dull. Dantalion stands frozen in panic upon realizing he could not even witness the girl's extremely fast movement. Commander Rin arrives running with the troops. Complaining that she should not have advanced alone so impulsively, Rin's eyes widen in panic upon noticing the body on the ground and asks if she truly defeated the legendary enemy commander. One of the soldiers celebrates, laughing out loud at the little lord's incredible feat, but the worried commander tells him to shut his mouth. Rin warns that now it will be impossible to avoid a direct war with the upper floor, but Seer questions with a lot of naivety. Pointing her red sword at the survivors, she suggests with a dark look, eliminating all witnesses from there. The commander explains that the other elite generals must have already noticed the occurrence, and Seer begins to concoct another plan. With a mischievous smile, she suggests blaming Dantalion, saying they were passing by and received a desperate plea for help. From afar, Dantalion feels a terrible shiver running up his spine, wondering where that chilling sensation is coming from. Rin suggests eliminating the enemies and going to talk to Dantalion, while the witnesses on the field begin to break into a cold sweat from terror. She proudly repeats the teacher's advice that they must not hesitate to eliminate rivals if necessary to win. With a friendly smile, she orders Rin and his men to take care of the rest of the enemy army, and the warrior accepts on the spot. Rin leads the advance of his troops through the canyon. Promising to annihilate the invaders under the direct orders of his lord, Dantalion celebrates, thinking her floor came to help him, but vows in silence to get rid of everyone. After the end of the battle, floating in the air, the young lord concentrates a gigantic sphere of purple energy, pointing directly at the castle walls. She prepares to unleash the devastating attack, while Dantalion observes her from the top of the tower, totally confused by the pose. The shot strikes the walls with overwhelming force, destroying the fortress and causing the soldiers to scream desperately in the chaos. In the middle of the rubble, Dantalion emerges wounded and shouts desperately, asking the reason she is attacking his castle. She fires back with pride, asserting that without her strength, everyone there would have been completely eliminated by the enemies from the portal. Dantalion complains irritably, saying he can undo her spell on his own while gathering glowing mana in his hands. He tries to use cancellation magic but falls into panic upon realizing she already masters spell dissipation techniques. Seer warns that fighting will do no good and gives the choice of him being buried or becoming her servant to save his lands. Observing the castle crumbling before her immense power, the lord is left speechless by the strength of the ruler from below. Rin observes the defeated lord and thinks about how that humiliation could be his, wondering if he should crush him for good. Dantalion accepts defeat in despair and begs her to stop the destruction, swearing fealty as her newest vassal. Very satisfied, she smiles and suggests formalizing the alliance pact officially between the floors of the castle. In the meeting hall of the 69th floor, the young man orders everyone to review the terms of the agreement one last time, Rin whispers, asking if she is sure about going against the mentor, and the little girl coldly reminds him that she is a lord right after. The girl begins to tremble with fear of having angered the teacher, causing Rin to laugh at her quick loss of composure. Suddenly, the doors of the hall are flung open violently by the young man, who enters the place shouting her name furiously. Everyone present at the table jumps in fright at the loud and intimidating entrance of the young mentor into that hall. Trembling with fear, the girl stammers, trying to explain herself, while the young man walks in silence with a dark look up to her. To everyone's absolute surprise, the young man runs and wraps the little girl in an extremely tight and loving hug. With his eyes closed, he sighs in relief and confesses how happy he is to see that she is safe and sound after the battle. Emotional, and with tears in her eyes, the little girl nestles against the teacher's chest and offers sincere apologies for her mistake. The young man remembers when he received the news that she had gone to battle and the despair he felt at that moment. He recalls having rushed to the portal even with the guards saying she was fine, wanting to see everything with his own eyes. He questions himself if he made a mistake in her upbringing, but brushes the thought aside, focusing only on the relief of having her safe. The young man remembers that the worst could have happened and trembles just imagining the possibility of her being gravely hurt. He firmly requests that everyone leave them alone in the hall. While Dantalion gets annoyed by the young man's bold attitude, the mentor turns around with glowing red eyes and a chilling aura, ordering the Lord to remove himself from there. Immediately, Dantalion begins to sweat from terror. Upon feeling the crushing pressure of that frightening amount of mana coming from the teacher, he asks for explanations, and the girl says she only wanted to help, making the young man remind her that she does not need to try so hard. She defends herself, saying she did everything right, avenging the floor by defeating the Golden Warrior and capturing the other enemy. The MC praises the result, but explains the consequences if she had failed, and the girl accepts the advice lying down. The young man warns that he does not want her strength exposed yet, as the enemy's ignorance regarding her power is a major advantage. The young man analyzes the papers on top of the table and asks about the terms of the new alliance treaty she just formalized. Upon reading the terms, he praises the clever plan of using Dantalion's floor as a base and absorbing the local merchants for good. The young man praises her clean work, and with a cute smile, the little girl asks if he will grant the wish promised, before he immediately confirms they will take the trip she wanted, leaving the young lord extremely happy and with sparkling eyes. The young man warns they will do that after resolving the crisis, and suggests they resume the council meeting immediately in the hall. The young man asks Dantalion the true size of the enemy army, and the Lord estimates tens of thousands of soldiers and mages. The mentor finds the number high, while Dantalion finds Seer's furious glare strange, because he spoke informally there. Dantalion quickly corrects his speech, adding a formal honorific upon realizing the danger of the girl's intimidating glare. The mentor notices that Dantalion's floor is devoid of troops and tries to concoct a way for them to win without destroying their lands. Seer reminds him they have Citri's support, but the young man knows that an all-out war will cause damage difficult to rebuild. Seer blames herself for the complication, but the teacher consoles her affectionately, telling her to view that merely as a good lesson. The young man remembers he only performed well so far because he knows the course of the game and that he needs to fix the story that went off script. He reveals that there is a method he did not want to use and announces grandly that he will personally intervene in the fight. On the 68th floor, the news of the troops' defeat and the failure in the neighboring floor's invasion generates great outrage. Lord Decarabia shouts furiously, demanding results from his generals after all the trust he placed in them in the past. On their knees, the generals beg for one last chance, promising that this time they will crush the rival army with full force. He accepts, but orders them to also bring Seer's head, threatening to end the generals themselves should they fail the mission. A bit later, one of the generals admits very apprehensively that he only lied with confidence so as not to be executed on the spot. He asks if the ally has any clever plan, but the warrior responds hopelessly after the loss of their companion. The winged warrior questions how Balthazar passed away, even with the armor, and the generals begin to argue irritably at the table. She explains that Commander Rin appeared by surprise, and the other agrees that retreating against Rin was the best decision there. They admit the girl's power is chilling and that they need to stop her, but Rubia reminds them that only 3 generals remain alive. With a wicked smile, the leader proposes an open-pitched battle, claiming that their army is still far superior. Rubia says Citri has no reason to fight them directly and suggests the plan is simply to strike first. The leader confirms the attack strategy and orders everyone to begin preparing immediately for the charge. A guard enters frantic, warning that the enemy army is already attacking. Leaving the generals completely shocked, Nain enjoys the cool breeze and praises Commander Rin for the advanced march that avoided any ambush along the way. Rin questions if they will manage to win without Citri's support, and is shocked to hear that Nain is not certain. Either Rin explains she was surprised, because the Lord Nain she knows always prepares very well before taking action. Nain agrees, smiling, and takes the blame for things getting confusing because he failed to predict Seer's actions. Rin asks the reason for taking such a major risk, and Nain explains that this is the fastest way with the least collateral damage. Nain orders Commander Rin to remain there holding the position with the troops, leaving the warrior surprised. Rin asks if he plans to head into combat alone, but the young man responds immediately that he will not do that. Nain reveals he will take 2 humans with him. Leaving Rin intrigued about the identity of the chosen helpers, Nain acknowledges that Rin does not yet fully trust the 2 humans and warns that today will be their ultimate test. He tells the youths to prove their worth in battle, and the 2 agree with determination, ready for the challenge. One of the humans wonders if they will manage to win since the previous opponent was only defeated after much study. The young man knows he is strong, but admits to himself that he does not know his true limit, and that this uncertainty bothers him. He reveals that this was why he prevented Seer from fighting, because he knows he will not get another chance if he fails the plan now. The humans warn that they spotted the enemies beyond the hill, and Nain ironizes, calling it a fine, welcoming reception. They observe the canyon and realize the path is completely infested with warriors from the enemy army. Nain orders the two humans to provide support as needed and advances with a smile to confront the rival. The enemy generals observe the valley after receiving reports from scouts but run into something unexpected. The enemy leader is intrigued upon spotting only one person walking alone and wonders if he is seeing correctly. A general alerts that clearly looks like a trap and suggests halting to send scouts to investigate. Rubia thinks the rivals fled, but the ally fires back, saying that them being hidden on the hill is much more likely. The general questions if she truly feels no magic, and the harpy confirms, saying that was why she suggested the flight. The general theorizes that the enemy avoided using magic because he knows Rubia's powers, but she calls them cowards. Irritated by their hesitation, Rubia decides to fly to check on the enemy alone, ignoring the warnings to fall back. The green-haired general complains about her recklessness, but the ally trusts that the harpy is well protected with magic. Rubia dives at high speed from the sky, mocking her land allies for wasting time with scouts. She charges directly at Nain, claiming that a direct, head-on attack is the best way to settle everything. The harpy shouts for her companions to watch and learn how terrifying a winged warrior can be. With a sarcastic smile on his face, the young man merely whispers a command, ordering the strike to pierce the target. Suddenly, a colossal stone spike emerges from the ground and pierces the harpy's body in an extremely brutal manner. Totally covered in blood at the top of the stone pillar, the harpy realizes in disbelief that her life is coming to an end. The lifeless body of the warrior crashes to the ground, while the young man merely observes her coldly without showing emotion. The enemy generals fall into panic upon seeing their ally be eliminated with such ease and demand to know who he is enveloped in a dark aura. The young man scorns the enemies, saying that loose tongues have no place in battle. A colossal creature resembling a white whale appears in the sky, leaving the rival army completely terrified. With a cold look, the young man orders the legendary Leviathan to do a thorough sweep, eliminating all invaders. The monster advances, crushing the enemy troops, who beg desperately for their lives in the middle of the destruction. The colossal creature strikes the ground with a devastating impact that generates a destructive shockwave through the valley. The surviving general begins to tremble in terror upon witnessing a level of devastating power that he has never seen before. Completely terrified, the general decides to mount his horse and flee as fast as possible from there, shouting in anger. The enemy asks desperately what he truly is, and the young man responds mockingly, asking who he thinks he is. The two humans observe the destructive force from afar and wonder if there is truly a need for them to fight. Dane insists they need to act to prove their utility, and the ally agrees to provide cover in the coordinated attack. Dane leaps from a cliff wielding his dagger and announces that he is counting on his companion's support. The young, pink-haired girl raises her staff and conjures a powerful spell to increase Dane's speed with the wind. The warrior advances like a flash of lightning toward the enemy, who is incredulous to see a human attacking with such audacity, delivering a swift and precise strike. Dane attacks the enemy mages with the goal of eliminating their defenses. She activates one more protective magic, wishing that an extremely resilient shield guarantee her allies' safety. A brilliant and destructive magical collision occurs in the air, illuminating the battlefield with electricity. The leader of the lizards notices the arrival of reinforcements and orders all of his units to advance in the charge. Dane lands on the ground on his knees holding his weapon and prepares to deliver the next physical strike. He leaps again, delivering a fast attack that makes the opponent shout in pain as he is struck in the midair. General Dahak falls defeated from his horse, leaving the enemy soldiers completely desperate. The horned demon lord grinds his teeth in anger upon seeing a mere human defeating his commanders. He assumes his imposing monstrous form and roars, swearing that he will tear the invader apart with his own hands. Nain suddenly appears wielding his blade and coldly warns the rival to keep his eyes on the battle. With a single swift and devastating slash, the young man cuts down the giant monster, leaving the opponent without reaction. The young man tells the rival not to lose focus and promises to send Decarabia to the exact same fate right after Aerie celebrates, highly relieved upon realizing that her support magic truly worked as planned. Suddenly, the young Lord Seer appears in an imposing manner from behind and asks where the teacher is. Aerie points down, and Seer comments in surprise about the wreckage her teacher caused in the canyon. Seer dreams of reaching that power, and Aerie agrees, saying she will certainly manage it because she is a lord. Aerie asks if Nain knows the girl is there, but Seer confesses she came to welcome him back in secret. Seer fires back sharply, frightening the girl, who apologizes immediately for being nosy. Seer questions jealously if the human has feelings for the teacher, but Eri says she only has terror of him. Upon hearing about the terror, the Lord gets confused and admits she made a mistake in interpreting Eri's words. Nan appears carrying a prisoner on his shoulders, and is surprised to spot Seer waiting for him in the valley. Eri celebrates upon seeing Dane return safely, and the warrior thanks her for her excellent magical support. Nain asks what brings her to the battlefield, and the girl responds joyfully that she came to welcome him back. He thanks her, smiling, and reflects that he cleared the threats to give her a safe chance to train in combat. Nain pats Seer's head and suggests that she and Rin finish conquering the upper floor's castle. The young man turns to Dane and Eri, praising the good work and saying that the 5 years of training paid off. He promises to give them their own missions when they return and tells them to rest while the two thank him, bowing with the 68th floor conquered. The young man reflects with satisfaction that now he only needs to find one item. Decarabia spits blood, totally weak and on his knees on the castle floor after being severely defeated. Seer ironizes the rival's weakness, while Rin ponders that the young lord has actually become too strong. Rin mentally wonders how Nain learned ancient spells that should have been lost a very long time ago. Decarabia says Nain created a monster, and Rin reminds Seer that the teacher's order is to keep the rival alive. Decarabia is grabbed with violence and asks desperately what they are planning to do with him there. Seer tightens her gloves, guaranteeing to her commander Rin that she knows perfectly well about the order given. The girl says, smiling, that it is fine as long as she does not end his life, and begins to strike the Lord mercilessly, with his face disfigured and bloody. Decarabia begs desperately to be finished off once and for all. Seer is totally surprised by the rival's state and questions indignantly the reason he is so weak. Afraid of getting a scolding from her teacher, Seer passes custody of the prisoner to Rin to handle the rest. Seer begs for the commander's help, who sighs and agrees to take the blame. Saving the girl from a scolding, Nain enters the hall by surprise, asking what they are thanking each other for, leaving the two startled. They try to hide the beating by concealing the body on the floor, but the young man notices right away that there is something wrong there. Nain points to the bloody hand on the carpet and asks directly if that one lying there is Decarabia. He tells her not to lie and to be honest about her mistakes, making the girl apologize. Quite embarrassed, the young man approaches to analyze the battered prisoner and comments in surprise about his wretched state. Nain celebrates that the prisoner survived, while the beaten lord weeps, wishing he were gone for good. Rin asks the reason for keeping Decarabia alive, arguing that he will not accept defeat so easily. The young man explains with a focused look that he did not spare him out of kindness, but rather to use him in his next plan. He presents a glowing crystal called a starstone, and Seer confirms that it is the specialty of the floor. The young man reveals he will use the rival's testimony to locate the mines that constantly changed positions. Seer suggests capturing other elite members, but Nain reminds her that she eliminated the generals without giving them a chance. Seer reminds him that demon lords are immune to mind control and asks how he will obtain that information. Suddenly, elegant, high-heeled footsteps echo down the castle hallway, announcing the arrival of a visitor. Citri enters the hall, saying she heard about them needing her, and notices Decarabia's wretched state on the floor. Citri complains about Nain being missing from training, and says she cast everything aside to rush over there to help him. Seer glares at Citri with an extremely jealous and furious look, annoyed at not being able to go up to that floor. Citri gulps, afraid that Seer's fury might increase should she use her special ability in front of the girl. Citri asks to have Seer removed from there, and demands privacy so she can use her power without any outside distraction. Nain agrees with the request and calls Seer to wait outside the hall. While the young woman follows him obediently, Seer asks how Citri will find the mines with fire magic, and Nain explains that he possesses a unique ability in the hall. Citri raises the weakened prisoner's head, demanding answers while he tries to resist. Citri activates her powerful charm gaze, demanding that Decarabia reveal the secret location of the star mines. The prisoner does not resist the spell and begins to reveal the exact directions of where the mines are hidden. Decarabia surrenders to the flame spell. Declaring his love for Citri while joyfully burning with the heat, Nain expresses gratitude for the help and explains that the mine will be a new source of income besides holding an item of extreme value. Citri shyly asks for a share of those profits for having helped, and Nain responds, smiling that he already planned to share. Nain teases, saying that the direct demand makes him want to change the deal. Leaving the ally quite annoyed, Nain agrees to split the stones as long as the conquest of the floor is publicly credited to Lord Citri. Nain clarifies that it will only be on paper and taunts the ally, saying that getting a castle for free is a bit shameless. Citri fears that the other factions will be on alert with so many consecutive conquests, complicating her future plans. Nain claps his hands, laughing because she noticed the taunt, and the Lord gets annoyed, shouting that she is no fool. Nain offers half of the gemstone production in exchange for the partnership. Leaving the ally quite surprised, Citri decides to accept the proposal, extending her hand to seal the deal because she thinks the profit outweighs the risk. Seer celebrates in a very cute way the conclusion of the business, guaranteeing that the alliance is now officially sealed. Nain smiles in agreement and comments that Seer should actually be the one responsible for managing that agreement. Citri grows uncomfortable with Seer's jealous glare and decides to leave, running after reinforcing her cut. Nain finds the allies' sudden flight strange, but Seer laughs, saying she must have just remembered something urgent. Nain asks about the date of the trip, and Seer prefers to postpone it until they resolve all the bureaucracy of the conquered floor. Nain suggests that she manage the place while he investigates the mines, and the young woman accepts the challenge, all content. Alone in her room, Seer looks sadly at her hands, remembering that it has been a while since she held the teacher's hand. She acknowledges with a racing heart that she has grown and that he will not treat her as before, but she still feels longing. The girl smiles excitedly, dreaming that on the future trip alone, she will be able to hold her tutor's hand the entire time. In the empty mine, Argol asks if the location is abandoned, and Nain explains that he ordered the workers to take the afternoon off. Nain says he brought him along to use his unique ability to distinguish different ores hidden through the walls. Rapaz orders him to search for a golden bracelet, and the ally finds it strange for a piece of jewelry to be buried in the rocks. Nain confesses, shrugging, that he does not know the reason either, and the ally begins to search the deep rocks. Nain reflects that in the game, that bracelet was just a hidden resource, but in reality, the logic is confusing. He notices the immense piles of ores and understands how Decarabia accumulated so much wealth ruling that floor. The young man lets out a greedy laugh from having a right to half of the profits, leaving the gargoyle quite frightened. Nain knows that the news of the conquest will spread fast and plans to use the profits to raise an army of his own. The MC mentally acknowledges that from then on, it will be impossible to continue advancing without suffering allied casualties. Argol alerts that he found a strange object that does not look like ore, and the young man asks him to step back. The young lord extends his hand glowing in green runic magic and begins to conjure the first phase of the spell. He concludes the conjuration of the extraction magic, causing the stone wall to tremble intensely with the channeled power. An intense explosion of magical light illuminates the dark cavern, indicating that the extraction was completed successfully. The golden bracelet appears floating in the midst of the magical energy, and Nain praises the gargoyle's great searching work. The young man analyzes the jewelry, remembering that it increased evolution efficiency in the game, and wonders how it will work there. The status screen of the ancient bracelet opens, revealing absurd bonuses to vitality, mana, and both magical and physical defense. Argol collapses to the ground, trembling, and begs the young man to contain his oppressive mana that spread through the entire cavern. The gargoyle complains that he was almost torn apart by the pressure, and Nain apologizes, promising to be more careful in the future. Crowley questions the need for the blood seal, but Seer insists because she wants to finish the task given by the teacher. The ally trembles with fear when the young man suggests leaving him, just like Decarabia, and accepts marking the prisoners right away. Desperate, the Lord stamps the alliance document with his own blood, finalizing the pact demanded by the invaders. Seer warns the Lord to respond quickly from now on, as she expects good service on his part. Seer asks if she performed well, and the teacher praises her, saying she handled everything like a true lord. Excited with the end of the obligations, Seer asks to go to a calm and very beautiful place to enjoy the trip. Nain promises to arrange a perfect location by the next day and tells the girl to rest for the grand trip. Nain surprises Seer by extending his hand to deliver a beautiful golden bracelet that he had kept for her, impressed. She holds the sparkling jewelry with both hands and thanks him from the bottom of her heart for the incredible gift. The young man tells her to wear the jewelry always, and Seer thinks with determination that she will never let her beloved tutor depart. Dane and Aerie arrive at the city of Chelino and comment that it has been quite a while since their last time in the human kingdom. They recall Nain's order to disguise themselves as adventurers and investigate the drop in invasions on the IA. Flordane warns that he will use the name Daniel and tells Aerie to use Ellie while they split up to investigate the cities. Aerie shows concern about blending in even while using fake identities, but Dane asks her to listen. The warrior firmly grips the hilt of his sword, acknowledging that it is difficult to accept the return situation. He remembers with a certain sadness that in the human kingdom, there is no one left alive who remembers who they are. Dane tells her to take care not to get involved with dangerous types, and Eri complains that she is no fool. He hands over a special blue pendant, recommending that she wear it in case she encounters any real danger. Dane explains that the pendant serves as a danger alert and says goodbye, scheduling the reunion for a month from then walking alone. Eri grumbles that he thinks she is a walking disaster until a voice interrupts her along the way. Some men armed with tools surround her, demanding her belongings, and she realizes that Dane was right. Eri notices that they do not look like real bandits and calmly questions the reason they are doing that. One of the men shouts in frustration, explaining that the crisis in the kingdom is so great that they had no other choice. The man explains that the great families have gone mad hunting demons and are burning down entire villages. Eri is left completely in shock by the revelation, while the man is astonished by her being unaware of the situation. She lies, saying she lived isolated for 5 years in the mountains, and the men show pity for her situation. Believing that she lost her memory, the men offer to take her in, but she politely declines the invitation. The man alerts that the holy knights would call her a witch on the spot should they know she lived there alone. He shares that the temple blames alleged witches for recent disappearances, launching a merciless hunt. He laments that the knights burn down the villages and take the children. While one of the peasants weeps from longing, Eri suspects that the knights acted without real proof and wonders why the adventurers support such a hunt. The man recalls that the order came directly from the grand holy temple that dictates the supreme laws of that kingdom. He clarifies in a serious manner that when the Pope proclaims a divine decree, all people are forced to obey. The scene shifts, revealing the imposing architecture of the grand holy temple, illuminated under the starry night sky. An elderly man in a robe comfortably steps out of the bath, commenting that the water was excellent after so much waiting. Lying in a provocative manner, Lily smirks, asking how the progress of the hunt in the kingdom is going. Pope Cernius celebrates, saying that the sweep worked, finding demon collaborators everywhere. The Pope thanks the young woman while she returns the compliment, saying that His Holiness is the one doing the heavy lifting. The Pope collapses to his knees on the floor, praising the young woman for being the only one who truly recognizes and values his efforts. With an extremely manipulative look, Lily extends her hand to caress the religious leader with ulterior motives. Bennett recommended that calm location, and the young man asks if there is anything wrong with the choice of the establishment. Nain rows quietly through the lake and asks if she does not like the water, but the girl guarantees that she actually loves it. She observes the crystal-clear waters of the lake glowing intensely under the sunlight in a magical and peaceful way. The Lord praises the beautiful architecture of the mansion and the surrounding forest, shyly commenting that the place is beautiful. She gets a bit upset upon seeing that all the servants came along to enjoy the barbecue near the large house. Seer reflects in frustration that she wanted to have come alone with him to be pampered away from the subordinates' eyes. Nain notices her distraction and asks if something is bothering her, and she decides to smile so as not to look so downcast. She brushes it off, saying she is very happy to stroll with everyone, and the young man celebrates, relieved to hear the answer. She sighs low, showing regret, and says it was nothing when the teacher asks what happened. The cook shouts from afar that dinner is ready, and Seer excitedly calls the teacher to go eat on the shore. The girl invites the tutor to eat and enjoy the moment, and the young man happily agrees to the proposal. The group gathers outdoors, savoring the grilled meats and enjoying the festive meal near the campsite. Later, the two have fun playing in the crystal-clear water of the lake while laughing under Rin's gaze. Seer thanks the maid for the relaxing bath, and the employee responds with friendliness that it was a pleasure to assist her. Seer asks where her teacher is and gets anxious upon learning that Nahen went out to take a quick walk in the open air. The maid helps put on a coat and suggests calling Rin, but the young lord decides to look for her mentor alone and nearby. Seer heads toward the forest because she can feel her beloved teacher's magical energy coming from that direction. She finds Nahen sitting on a wooden bench, looking quite serious while analyzing a mysterious piece of paper. With an extremely dark look and his eyes glowing, the young man burns the mysterious letter without showing any hesitation. Seer approaches, asking if something happened, and he reveals he received a message from Eri, leaving the girl intrigued. Nahen explains that the human sent news about the knights burning villages and arresting innocent people without mercy. Seer thinks the leader of the kingdom has gone mad for judging innocence, and Nahen agrees that this situation is indeed very strange. The young man fears that the chaos in the human kingdom will end up awakening a legendary hero ahead of time, which would be a major problem. He remembers that in the game, the appearance of a hero is like a natural disaster, capable of wiping out half of his allied forces. Nahen decides he will need to go to the human kingdom to resolve this crisis, and Seer reacts in surprise, asking the reason for this. He explains that if the Holy Kingdom convinces the other nations to attack the demons, all armies will come against them. Seer trusts that her teacher can defeat any army just the same way he did with Decarabia's allied forces. The young man is surprised to realize that she knows about the occurrence, and the young lord admits she merely deduced it from the trail of wreckage. Seer asks what that giant whale he carries is, and the young man confesses a bit awkwardly that not even he knows for sure. Nahan changes the subject, saying it is just a pet, and Seer stands amazed by her tutor's incredible power. The young lord almost calls him cool, but covers it up stammering, while Nahan mentally thanks for her innocence. He stands up, remembering that their army is still in the beginning stages, and that chaos in the human kingdom will bring no benefit. The young man pats Seer's head and praises her intelligence for quickly understanding the need to investigate the case. Seer complains that he is working during their vacation, and asks in a cute way if they cannot stroll together now. The mentor accepts the invitation and suggests they walk together through the forest, leaving the girl extremely radiant with happiness. She holds firmly onto his arm with affection, and the young man thinks to himself that deep down, she is still just a sweet child. With an extremely intense and possessive look, the young lord promises herself that she will never let her teacher leave. Seer praises the flavor of human sweets, and Cecily agrees, recalling with affection that her companion would love to try them. Nahan asks for caution with conversations and tells Cecily to hide in the private room of a coffee shop in the Holy Kingdom's city. Cecily guarantees that the concealment magic is perfect and that humans will never notice the horns and tail that are hidden. Nahan smiles, remembering that he planned to go alone, but Seer and Cecily insisted very much on accompanying him on this important trip. The young man reflects that the company is not bad upon seeing the girl so excited and happy, savoring that delicious piece of cake. Seer asks when the human ally is going to arrive, and the tutor calms the girl, explaining that they merely arrived ahead of schedule. Seer ironizes, calling the man lazy, and the young man thinks, amused, that she truly sounds like a demon lord sometimes. The door opens, revealing the arrival of the ally, and the young man receives him with a friendly smile, saying he came right on time. The man bows respectfully before Seer, and the young man asks right away if he brought the items requested before the ally delivers the adventurer plates, explaining that Nahan ended up with the AA rank, while the girls gained the A rank. Seer demands to have the same level as her teacher, but Nahan asks for haste, explaining that he needs a high status to act quickly. The mentor promises that they will have the same rank in the future, and the girl accepts reluctantly, thanking him for his consideration. Nahan asks about the current situation, and Dane reveals that the Holy Kingdom is hunting down alleged allies of the demons out there. The young man understands the major influence of the church, and the ally shares that he heard a strange rumor that is quite difficult to believe. The rumor says that the Pope himself took a mysterious woman to his quarters and is now being manipulated by her from up close. The young man is completely shocked by the gossip and questions in surprise how the leader of the church himself would commit such a profane act. Dane explains that no cleric would dare do that in the temple under risk of severe punishment, making the rumor even more suspicious. The mentor decides to investigate thoroughly, suspecting that the mysterious woman is not an ordinary human, but rather an infiltrator. Cecily analyzes the possible routes to the human kingdom and theorizes that a specific demon would be the most likely candidate. Nahan finds the theory valid, but recalls that the holy power of the capital is extremely lethal to ordinary demons and lords. The young man explains that the god worshipped in the kingdom is actually an angel who heavily blessed the capital with holy barriers. The question that arises is, what would happen should a true demon opposite to the angel try to invade that holy place? Seer asks if he already suspects someone, and the teacher admits he has a strong hunch but prefers not to reveal it yet. He remembers that in the game, true demons are a different and far superior race compared to the common monsters inhabiting the deep chaos. The young man deduces that one of these malicious beings desires to destroy the celestial kingdom and may have secretly allied with the local pope. He decides to act quickly to contain this threat and prevent the hero from appearing ahead of time, ruining his expansion plans. Nahan announces that he needs to go alone to the capital and tells the young lord to investigate another city, but she begs to accompany him. The young man explains, smiling, that the capital's holy barrier is very strong and that he would not manage to protect the two inside there. He caresses Seer's head, reminding her that the mission given to her is crucial and will define the course of all plans from then on. The mentor says he trusts her completely for this task, and the girl responds all excited, promising that she will not fail. Nahen says goodbye, calling the ally Dane to depart immediately. While the two girls wish him a safe journey, Seer leaves Cecily completely surprised by asking the meaning of the Pope, taking a mysterious woman to the quarters. The young lord requests a simple explanation, reminding her that she used to sleep together with her maids when she was a child. Cecily stammers, explaining the gender difference, but Seer says she has already slept with the teacher and questions what the problem with that is. Cecily realizes that the girl never received proper education and decides to seize the opportunity to explain the truth. The maid approaches and whispers discreetly into the girl's ear, revealing the true meaning behind that phrase. Seer turns red from embarrassment and says her father lied by telling her that babies were brought by dragons when people slept. Cecily smiles awkwardly, saying the former lord only made up the story because she was very young, leaving the girl shocked. Seer begins to reflect on the revelation, realizing that now she is an adult woman and that her teacher is an attractive man. With a racing heart, the young lord gives a mischievous smile, wondering if that could also happen between the two of them. In the beautiful city of Chelino, the human Eri asks how she should call the two demons from now on, so as not to raise suspicions. Seer and Cecily admit they do not know how to read the human's language, and wonder about the reason Nahen did not reveal the fake names. Eri deduces that the young man simply forgot to notify them, and reveals that the fake names of the two will be Sarah and Sylvia from now on. The human explains that the mentor chose names very similar to the original ones to prevent the two from getting confused. Out there, Eri asks quite apprehensively if she truly has permission to call the young lord by the fake name in front of other people. Seer responds with a firm tone that this is the bare minimum they must do, so that the secret mission ordered by Nahen succeeds. Seer tells Cecily to use the fake name too, but the servant prefers to pretend to be the silent type to avoid speaking the informal name. Seer questions the reason Eri has the double A rank, and the youth explains that the level also depends on how many missions one has already completed. Eri confesses with sparkling eyes that she pushed herself to the maximum to fulfill all tasks perfectly for Nahen's sake. Seer glares at the human with a terrifying look of pure jealousy and coldly warns her to watch her real intentions. Eri gets startled by the violent reaction and tries to justify herself without understanding what she said wrong. To make the lord so angry, Cecily tries to calm tempers, explaining that Eri only did that out of loyalty, and the human agrees desperately to save herself. The young lord accepts the excuse reluctantly, and Eri thanks Cecily immensely for having saved her life with that lie. Seer asks about the schedule of actions, and Eri shows the map, revealing that the Night Order requested support from the guild. Knowing that the Knight's plan is to hunt demon spies, Seer gives a wicked smile. Seeing there a great chance to act, Eri warns they will depart the next day, but asks worriedly what they will do if the Knights discover the truth about them. Seer responds with naturalness that she will end whoever finds out, and Cecily agrees that eliminating everyone is the best option there. Eri makes an important warning, alerting that all knights use holy magic, and Seer reacts with a certain disdain to the warning. The girl almost says that this sounds very fun, but quickly corrects her speech, promising that she will take plenty of care on the mission. In the Adventurer Guild, the person in charge begins the roll call, telling all volunteers to respond quickly upon hearing their name. The man calls Eri's name, and the young lord whispers, asking who he is, fearing he might uncover the girl's sham. Eri explains discreetly that the man's name is Benedict, and that he is the respected master of that Adventurer Guild. Seer suggests eliminating the guildmaster in secret, but the human warns in panic that the man possesses a lot of influence in the kingdom. The master calls the fake names of Sarah and Sylvia, and the two demons respond promptly, disguising their true voices. The human celebrates relieved upon realizing that the disguises worked perfectly, and that no one suspected a thing inside there. The guildmaster gathers everyone and announces with formality that he will introduce the true client of that grand mission. The leader introduces himself as Joffrey of the Holy Order and warns in an arrogant manner that they will do all the heavy lifting in the hunt. Joffrey guarantees that he has already scoured the entire region, that the task will not be dangerous, asking if anyone has any doubt. Upon being questioned about the plan, the knight explains that the adventurers must evacuate the villagers and protect the innocents. Seer finds the knight's calm behavior strange and wonders if they truly are just hunting demon spies. In a sharp manner, the girl whispers that it would be easier to end a villager as an example to make all the others flee shortly. Eri explains in a low voice that the knights act differently, and Seer stands intrigued to learn that there are resilient humans. Seer raises her hand and asks the leader directly how they plan to identify the demons who are hidden in the village. The knight notices the girl's rank, but responds in a serious manner that the search method is a military secret of the order. Seer questions if there truly are demons in the region, and the leader deflects the topic, asking in a suspicious way what her age is. Seer fires back irritated, saying her age is on the file, and the leader apologizes, thinking she might be a hidden elf. Joffrey declares the start of the purification operation in the village to give rise to the merciless hunt against the demons. The knights threaten to burn the houses if the residents do not come out, frightening an innocent family that hides in silence. A mother flees desperate, carrying her baby while the knights pursue her, claiming she is an infiltrated demon. The captured citizens beg for their lives while the soldiers treat them with violence without showing any compassion. Seer finds the humans' actions very violent, and Cecily questions the reason, only they were forced to wait. Joffrey warns that the situation is nearly under control and calls the three to follow him, leaving Aerie quite suspicious of the order. The leader asks a special favor because he knows they use magic and invites them to go to a strategic location to talk. They arrive at the town hall, and Joffrey reveals that the alleged heretics locked themselves in there, asking help to break the magical seal. He explains that the protective barrier is extremely strong and that he failed when trying to force the opening with his own strength. The knight asserts that he called them for this, and Aerie agrees that the best way to counter magic is by using another superior magic. Thinking about quickly fulfilling the order given by Nahan, the young lord draws her sword, telling everyone to step back immediately. Joffrey alerts that an ordinary sword cannot break the magical barrier, but agrees to let her try after her insistence. The warrior thinks, amused, that recklessness is normal at her age, since not even his captain managed to breach that defense. To Joffrey's absolute astonishment, a single strike of Seer's sword is enough to break and shatter the entire barrier. The girl comments with disdain about the ease of the feat, while the knight stammers without managing to understand what happened. The leader expresses gratitude, placing his hand on the young woman's shoulder to assume control, leaving Seer quite irritated by his touch. With a terrifying look and a heavy aura, the demon lord tells the knight to take his hand off her under risk of suffering the consequences. Joffrey begs pardon immediately upon feeling a crushing and frightening pressure of magical energy coming from that girl. Seer considers ending everyone there at once, while the knight trembles from terror without managing to move before her absolute power. The young lord passes the responsibility of monitoring to Aerie, warning that she must observe everything and report the result later. The leader questions in panic who the two girls are, but Aerie says that does not matter, telling the man to focus on his mission. Joffrey shows the purifying crystal that reacts when approaching demons, and Aerie notices that the jewelry possesses a mysterious magic. Upon being questioned about the operation, Joffrey admits he does not know how to explain, but trusts the item for having come directly from the Pope. With a determined look, the knight opens the doors of the town hall to give rise to the sweep and judgment of all villagers. The citizens of the village prepare themselves with agricultural tools, asking in surprise how the invaders managed to pass. Joffrey introduces himself and tries to calm the residents, guaranteeing that the innocents will be able to return shortly to their daily lives. The citizens react irritated, shouting that they will never believe them, while the purifying crystal begins to glow intensely. Realizing that words will not be enough, the knight draws his sword and attacks one of the rebels in an extremely brutal manner. The man strikes the ground already lifeless, leaving all the other residents completely terrified by the sudden murder. The leader mocks the citizens, saying they only quiet down under brute force, and Aerie observes everything quite startled in the back of the room. The young human gulps in shock, wondering if the knight went mad for acting in such a cowardly and merciless way. The knight tells everyone to approach one by one and uses the glowing crystal to accuse the first man of being a demon spy. He tells the victim not to have fear, claiming that everything will end quickly, and executes the man with a cold slash before the crowd. Aerie knows that any brief visit to the demon kingdom leaves evident trails of magical energy on people's bodies. Facing the pleas for mercy, Aerie focuses her gaze on the knights, realizing that there is something very wrong with that hunt. She notices that none of the executed victims possesses trails of demonic magic, and concludes that that is not a real purification. The leader complains that the crystal stopped working, and Aerie suggests that her magical companion can try to fix the broken item. Joffrey agrees to hand over the jewelry because he trusts the skill demonstrated before and leaves the repair under Aerie's responsibility. Moments later, the young lord analyzes the holy crystal intrigued, wondering if that is truly the item used in the hunt. Aerie asserts that the jewelry looks totally fake and asks Cecily to analyze the crystal up close in search of more information. Cecily reacts extremely shocked upon touching the crystal, and Seer notices the amazement, asking if she discovered something strange there, holding the crystal. The young lord confirms that the item is not originating from the demon kingdom, but notices a different energy. Seer reveals that the magic accumulated inside the crystal resembles the magic of the deep underworld itself, located under the kingdom. The Lord orders Cecily not to let anyone escape so that they can take the confiscated crystal without raising any suspicion. Cecily assumes her true form and begins to conjure a powerful magic of absolute darkness to isolate the entire village. Several magical circles of pink color glow under the servants' feet, generating violent winds and dust all through the stone street. An immense magical dome covers the entire region, and Aerie watches in shock, realizing that the ally is not a simple domestic maid. Cecily alerts that the isolation barrier is ready, and the Lord praises the good work, while the human trembles from terror behind, with an extremely dark look. Seer activates her own magic and initiates a grand and imposing magical conjuration in the courtyard. The young Lord tells the human not to have fear, promising to spare her life, and leaves Aerie completely terrified with her presence. Seer wields her new red weapon with firmness, demonstrating being ready for any combat that arises. The young lord smiles in a cute way, saying she will spare the human only as long as her teacher has some utility for her. Disguised as a priest in the Grand Temple, the young man worries mentally, hoping that Seer does not cause any confusion. The young man apologizes for the moment of distraction, and the other priest calls him Brother Antonio, guiding the way through the hallways. He smiles, satisfied, thinking that the disguise is perfect since no one would suspect the murder of a priest for identity theft. However, the young man feels a strong discomfort with the immense holy energy of the celestial god that fills that entire grand temple. He tells Dane to locate the Pope's quarters quickly because the holy energy of the temple is truly making him irritated. The scene shifts to the imposing palace under the blue sky, where a respectful voice calls for the religious leader in his quarters. The demon Lily massages the Pope's back and asks in a suspicious way if he invoked another being. Besides her in the last days, the Pope denies, startled, guaranteeing that she is the only one who understands him, and Lily accepts the answer, appearing a bit thoughtful. Suddenly, footsteps invade the quarters, and a mysterious figure warns in an imposing manner that he will need to disturb the Pope for an instant. Without hesitating, the figure delivers an extremely swift and devastating punch that breaks the ceiling and strikes the demon with full force. Dane immobilizes the startled religious leader, holding him firmly by the collar of his clothing to avoid any escape attempt. The demon Lily reacts quickly, delivering a powerful strike that throws the invader violently against the stone floor of the quarters. Lily questions the Pope about the invader on the floor, and the startled leader stammers, saying he has no idea how he managed to enter. The Pope begs for clemency, guaranteeing that it must be a mistake since no ordinary person would manage to pass through the holy barrier. Lily questions how the invader passed, but falls silent in surprise upon realizing that the white-haired warrior vanished suddenly from the floor. The demon looks up and notices the massive hole opened in the ceiling through which the mysterious opponent managed to escape quietly. Lily shouts furiously, ordering the immediate capture of the human, but is interrupted by an imposing voice praising Dane's work. The young man emerges from the top of the hole, asserting coldly that he already suspected that entire situation was a direct setup from the underworld. The demon Lily begins to tremble from terror upon feeling the immense and oppressive amount of dark energy that emanates from the young man. The legendary creature Leviathan appears cutely on the young man's shoulder, making the demon Lily widen her eyes in pure shock and terror. Totally terrified, the demon questions herself mentally about the true identity of that man before her. With a serious and intimidating look, the young man celebrates being recognized and demands answers about who sent the demon there. The revelation that arises in her mind points out that that mysterious and powerful man belongs to the legendary inverted kingdom of chaos. He raises the demon by the neck, demanding answers, and she confesses breathless that she is under the direct orders of Lord Gamaliel. Upon hearing the name, the young man lets out a chuckle of scoff and tells the demon to return, to give a serious warning to her lascivious master. Without demonstrating any mercy, the young man hurls the demon's body with extreme force against the opposite wall of the quarters. He casts a severe look and warns in a threatening manner that he will not let it pass should a similar incident happen again in the kingdom. Lily thanks Tremulous for having her life spared and begins to conjure a portal of dark flames on the stone floor to flee from there. With shouts echoing, the demon leaps into the fire portal that closes quickly, leaving only smoke behind. Pope Cernius shouts desperate in panic upon seeing his beloved ally fleeing and abandoning him completely alone with the enemy. The religious leader collapses to his knees, weeping for Lily's disappearance, while the young man observes him with a cold and imposing look. The young man questions in a sharp manner if the Pope invoked the demon and tells the leader not to play dumb before the gravity of the act. The Pope appears confused and begins to question himself if he truly invoked a demon and for what reason that woman was with him. Upon realizing the immense mental confusion of the man, the young man notices that his mind was severely affected by manipulation magic. The young man holds the Pope's head, telling him to stay quiet so that he can perform a deep magical verification on his mind. He analyzes the energy flow and concludes that that resembles a succubus brainwashing, but of a much superior tier. He deduces that the spell was cast by Lily's master, but wonders about the reason they chose precisely the Pope of the kingdom. The young man understands that the plan was to infuriate the celestial god by corrupting the most devout servant of the church with demonic magic. The grand question that arises is if the deep demons were trying to initiate an all-out war against the entire celestial kingdom. The Pope expresses gratitude for having his mind liberated, but the young man warns coldly for the man not to mistake him for a savior to worship. The young man knows that a conflict of divine scale would ruin his plans of making Seer reach the pinnacle of the kingdom with safety. The Pope reveals that the demon appeared from nowhere and ordered that he initiate the purification to hunt the spies of the demon kingdom. The leader explains that Lily delivered the magical jewelry to guide the hunt, and the young man interrupts him, asking to clarify one more detail. Pope Cernius confesses that the infiltration only occurred with ease because the temple's holy protection barrier weakened. He reveals the secret that the celestial god has never responded to the church's calls since the foundation of the kingdom 400 years ago. The young man stands surprised to learn that the worshipped god has never protected the humans, acknowledging that this information is new to him. The Pope asks who he truly is, and the young man questions about the prisoner negotiation letter that he sent previously. Nahen places his hand on the Pope's shoulder with an ironical smile and guarantees that he prefers to maintain a peaceful relationship with the kingdom's church. Pope Cernius bows respectfully, thanking Nahen for having liberated his mind from that terrible manipulation. With a dark expression, the young man hopes that both manage to maintain a good diplomatic relationship from here on out. Back home, Seer celebrates joyfully, saying she missed her dear teacher and tutor very much. The young man hugs her tight, asking if she got hurt, and Seer denies with a beautiful smile from ear to ear. She proudly shows the confiscated crystal, revealing that the jewelry possesses a wicked energy very similar to that of the underworld. The young man praises the feat, but questions laughing how she managed to steal the item without drawing the attention of local guards. Seer jokes, saying she merely acted quickly as his student, and celebrates that the disciple finally surpassed the master there. The mentor notices the evasion and asks Cecily directly what truly happened during the mission in the village. Cecily asks for forgiveness and reveals that the young lord ended up wiping out all the knights and adventurers of that region. The young man gets extremely irritated and gives a scolding to the girl, reminding her that he had expressly asked to avoid confusion. Startled, Seer complains to Cecily, saying the tutor gives too much fear, and the succubus fires back, saying she warned her to be honest. The young man questions why Cecily did not stop her, but apologizes shortly upon remembering her blind loyalty toward the Lord. Nahen orders that the two remain monitoring the site and tells the human Aerie to change her identity quickly for her safety. The young man decides to overlook the attitude because he knows the girl acted on impulse. Wanting only to make him proud with the result, he calms the girl, proposing they return home to eat pudding, and Seer reacts with her eyes sparkling from so much joy. The young man smiles and agrees, but reflects mentally that he will need to resolve the more serious matters alone. From now on, Seer reacts indignant with the mentor's decision to act alone, and shouts, protesting that she finds the attitude very unfair to her. Some days later at the mansion, Cecily knocks politely on the mentor's office door, asking permission to enter. Nahen asks what happened, and the succubus apologizes before making a suggestion about the young lord's daily classes. Worried, the young man asks if the girl is finding his classes boring, but Cecily denies, saying that the topic is quite different. The succubus reveals that Seer still believes that babies come from dragons. Leaving the mentor thoughtful about the fables of the kingdom, Cecily requests, in a very serious manner, that Nahen give health and development education classes to the girl, and leaves the young man completely in shock. The servant discourses in an amusing way about the great importance of teaching these values and feelings to young lords. Totally worked up, Cecily slams both hands on the mentor's table, leaving the young man startled with that attitude. She argues that if the girl remains this innocent, some lying rascal will be able to take advantage of her easily. The young man agrees, thinking that there truly are many opportunists out there, and that people need to take care of themselves in matters of the heart. He mentally acknowledges that the feelings of the heart and affection are impossible things to control with pure logic. The mentor agrees, nodding his head in a serious manner, and Cecily lets out a long sigh of relief for being understood. The succubus smiles joyful, asserting that she counts on him to give the class, and the young man reacts confused, asking if he must do that. The tutor suggests that a woman teach, but Cecily guarantees that the young lord would prefer from her heart to learn directly from him. The young man decides to pass the important task to Ria, claiming that because she is like a mother to the girl, it will be more suitable. Nahan thinks that Ria is the perfect choice, but stands confused upon noticing the servant shaking her head, disapproving of his decision. A while later, Ria listens to the request in the hall and confirms that she will teach the girl. Agreeing with the extreme necessity of it, Ria smiles in a malicious way, guaranteeing a thorough teaching that includes even precious tips on how to charm men. Ria initiates the private class for Seer, promising a practical teaching that includes even precious tips on how to attract men. Upon hearing about winning over men, the girl gets extremely excited and vows that she will push herself to the maximum to learn everything. On that day of intensive studies, the young lord learned valuable life lessons and very deep teachings with Ria. Nahan finds his students' delay for the daily class in the courtyard strange, since she is always the first to arrive to wait. The young man asks the servant Eldon for the student's whereabouts, and he reveals that she delayed to change clothes several times. The mentor reflects thoughtfully about the fact of her starting to care about appearance in such a sudden way, and without warning, the servant Eldon asks if he desires any more information, and the mentor expresses gratitude, dismissing the employee next. Decided to wait with patience. The young man notices that his small companion Leviathan appears agitated, looking behind. The young man turns suddenly, feeling a slight shiver, and runs into the young lord, who calls him with a very soft voice. Seer appears wearing a stunning and luxurious long dark gala dress, asking sincere apologies for the immense delay. The mentor stands impressed with her beauty and praises the girl, asserting that she is the most beautiful person in the entire kingdom. The girl turns very red from embarrassment with the direct compliment, and the tutor vows mentally to continue guiding her with affection. Seer questions what his ideal type of woman is, and the mentor realizes on the spot that that question is the fruit of the classes with Ria. He gives a standard response, saying he values connection, but admits mentally that he does possess an ideal type in mind. Seer notes everything down in a small notebook and asks if he has ever loved someone, leaving the young man without knowing when she grabbed the pad. He notices her sudden interest in these romantic matters, but laments to himself for not having stories to tell. The young man recalls a brief relationship back in college, but admits that afterward, he only wanted to know about playing video games all day long. Nahan confesses a bit awkwardly that he has never felt true love and suggests that she ask someone more experienced. Seer notes down the response in the notebook, extremely surprised to discover that her tutor has never lived a grand love story. With her face red, the girl realizes excitedly that she will be his first love, and Nahan finds her sudden behavior strange. He says that even teachers have doubts, and the girl asks if he thinks he will find someone special in the future. The young man changes the subject, saying he knows nothing, and asserts that he needs to focus on returning to his home soon. He notices the hours and leaves quickly, claiming that he possesses important commitments to resolve in the afternoon period. Seer observes him from afar, knowing that he has totally decided to leave and that he will not change his opinion easily. But the young lord promises herself that when time passes and she becomes strong enough, things will change. With a dark look, the girl vows that she will find her own way to keep the teacher bound to her side forever. In the imposing palace of the 9th floor, Lord Gamaliel demands explanations about the early failure of the important secret mission. Lily bows, trembling from terror before her mistress, and confesses, stammering that she was interrupted in the middle of the hunt. Gamaliel mocks the excuse, claiming that a mere mishap does not justify her return without fulfilling the orders given. Lily tries to explain herself desperate, asserting that an extremely powerful and chilling presence emerged from the bedroom ceiling. The mistress caresses her face, smiling in a sadistic way, and warns that lies demand a severe punishment in the demon kingdom. Held by purple magic chains in the air, the demon begs for mercy, guaranteeing that she is telling the absolute truth. Upon hearing the ally reveal that the creature Leviathan was present in the temple, the mistress widens her eyes in pure shock. Gamaliel demands that she repeat the name, and Lily reveals that the ruler of the inverted kingdom of chaos himself was there at the site. The ruler decides to postpone the punishment, telling the servant to withdraw, and Lily thanks tremulous and relieved for having been spared. Gamaliel gives a wicked smile, thinking she finally discovered the whereabouts of the legendary missing ruler of chaos. Meanwhile, Naan takes advantage of the free time to inspect the new soldiers gathered in the immense training arena. Commander Rin presents the divisions of the troops, and Nahan asks Sire's opinion before so many gathered warriors Sire disdains, claiming she has no utility for the weak. But the tutor ponders that at the moment, they need quantity. The young lord says she understands the advice but guarantees with a firm smile that she will not let anyone embarrass her name. With decided and firm steps, the girl walks toward the center of the arena, initiating a new phase for her army. She draws her imposing red sword and warns the thousands of warriors that only the strong will be part of her troops. The soldiers whisper confused, wondering if the test is real, and the demon lord glares at them, challenging everyone to advance. With a swift leap, the girl attacks, delivering a devastating strike that makes the courtyard stones tremble intensely with the impact. She stops the blade of her red sword a few millimeters from a soldier's face, leaving the man paralyzed from terror. To Seer's astonishment, the teacher appears suddenly, holding the sharp blade of the sword with his own hands without hesitating. The young lord stands in shock upon noticing that her mentor blocked the sharp strike with just one hand and without suffering a scratch. The young man smiles patiently and asks to talk alone with the student so that she listens to his advice with more calmness. Later, he explains that her plan to select only heroes is unfeasible in the current situation of the demon army. The mentor caresses Seer's head, asserting that they will use these new soldiers to create a strong legion in the future. Some days later, Rhea joins the council, asking indignant the reason for being called to choose officers. The young man praises the allies' good eye for talent and requests that she help at the evaluation counter of the gathered new troops. Rhea demands a reward for the work, but Seer reprimands her, saying that allies should not charge anything for favors. Nahan promises to return the favor in the future, and the ally agrees, smiling, saying she can hardly wait for that moment. Seer questions if they truly need wooden swords, and the tutor calms the girl, saying it is just a warm-up. Rhea promises a rigorous test, and Nahan agrees, warning that he prefers to leave the spots vacant if no soldier stands out. Rhea finds it strange to see Seer holding a training weapon, and the young lord gives a mischievous smile, revealing she is the examiner. With a conceited smile, the girl draws her wooden sword and requests a reward from the tutor should she win all the combats. The teacher accepts the proposal with a loving smile on his face, recommending only that she take care not to get hurt. The blue-haired assistant gives start to the event, calling the candidates one by one to face the Lord at the top of the stairs. An armored elf warrior volunteers to fight first, and Seer praises in an amusing way his audacious courage. The elf advances confident, believing that his greater physical strength and defensive tactics will be enough to hold the girl. The mediator starts the count, and the two opponents exchange intent glances, awaiting only the audible starting signal. The assistant clicks on the control device, triggering the audible warning that marks the official start of that duel in the arena. Seer disappears from sight in the blink of an eye, leaving the elf adversary completely confused and without understanding the occurrence. The youth appears behind his back with the wooden sword already pointed and mocks him for losing her trail so fast. With a well-aimed strike, Seer hits the adversary, who lets out a cry of pain as he is struck and disarmed quickly. She complains that the warrior could not even react to the attack, decreeing his disqualification and calling the next. The girl continues defeating the other competitors one by one at high speed without giving any chance of defense. Rhea observes the brutal consecutive knockouts and comments that looks more like a beating than a fair evaluation. Nahan explains that the reaction time of each one is different, but the succubus questions if it is possible to evaluate with just that. The tutor guarantees that the test is valid because merely managing to block Seer's first attack already proves having a lot of skill. Seer praises a soldier who almost managed to defend himself and places him on the waiting list. Leaving the warrior grateful, Rhea asserts that even for Nahan, it would be difficult to block Seer's strikes, and the young man admits that it truly would be an arduous task. Nahan thinks proud that the girl will soon become the new queen of martial arts due to her immense natural talent. The succubus asks about the invasion plans for the upper floor, and Nahan recalls that the lord of that location is very dangerous. The next grand target of Nahan's army is the legendary and feared Belial, known as the terrible lord of hellfire. Rhea calls him a complete lunatic, explaining that Belial had plenty of strength to easily be among the top lords. The young man finds the term vulgar, but the succubus fires back, reminding him that Belial simply threw away his excellent rank position. Nahan recalls that Belial was the most difficult rival in the game and reflects on using clever tactics to win the dispute. The mentor highlights the importance of his military alliances, and Rhea asks what the final plan to conquer the floor will be. He says that the task will be easy with her help, and the succubus brags, making the young man pretend that he changed his mind about the plan. The young man trusts that the rapid growth of Seer's army will allow them to face Belial on equal terms in the fight. Rhea alerts not to act with carelessness because she knows Belial's servants are extremely loyal to their feared mad leader. With a dark expression, the mentor plans to find a way to completely destroy the morale of the opposing army. Meanwhile, in the training arena, Seer continues blocking the wooden strikes with a confident smile in the courtyard. The young lord asks the name of an opponent who introduces herself startled as Celestia, belonging to the local 4th Legion. Seer approves of the opponent's performance, and Celestia thanks immensely, weeping from relief for having passed the rigorous test. The young man praises his pupil's growth, and Rhea agrees, impressed with how much the young lord evolved since the beginning. Nahen praises her maturity, and the succubus thinks, amused, that the young man acts exactly like a proud, doting father toward his daughter. Rhea comments that she found the girl cute when she was smaller, but confesses that lately she has not felt the same for her. Nahen teases her, asking if she is jealous of the girl's beauty, and the succubus fires back, irritated that she considers herself much more beautiful. The succubus says the problem is different, and the MC wonders if there was any recent misunderstanding between the two. Rhea reveals that sometimes Seer glares at her with an extremely furious look, and the mentor finds the revelation very difficult to believe. The succubus explains that the look of fury occurs when she is friendly with Nahen, leaving the young man shocked with the revelation.